If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 96, Combat Draw. Spent a month on vacation in Konoha, which became increasingly crowded with tourists and envoys eagerly awaiting the start of the Chunin exam's grand finale. Businesses were booming, and prices increased to maximize profits. Did we do anything remotely productive other than training? There is actually something, but calling it productive or useful is relative. I remember one night we all went out to eat, and somehow, in a way that I'm not very clear about, I ended up teaching them how to do that Irish dance that uses tap dance as if your feet were bewitched. I think it was called river dance. I didn't even need the special solace. Fu, Karin, Shizuan, Anko, and Seimeikage ended up joining me with enthusiasm, and after a bit of practice, we ended up dancing in sync as a group on a wooden board amidst laughter and applause from others. Apart from that, we really just had fun together. Mikoto seemed to react positively during our stay and started to open up a bit more, perhaps due to the familiar environment. I can say that some people recognized her, but then shook their heads, probably thinking that she should only be someone who looks like herself. She didn't seem to mind that Kimimaro beat up Suzuki, she almost seemed grateful for bringing the kid's ego down and giving him a taste of reality, although maybe that was just my impression. Enel! Someone shouted. The Seimeikage and I met on the way to the Colosseum, and after a competition in the pure style of Major Armstrong vs Curtis, we shook hands and put our arms around each other's necks, laughing. What are you doing? Tsunade shook her head embarrassed. Meanwhile, Pakura, Seimeikage, and Anko secretly wiped drool from the corners of their mouths. It seems like I'll have them motivated tonight. My mood just improved infinitely. Why did you decide to come? I asked, intrigued. I thought you were going to send a representative or something, at least that's what your letter from last week said. That was the plan, but after hearing how your brats managed to reach the final, I thought, I have to see this, the Seimeikage responded with enthusiasm. Besides, I had to come in person to congratulate you. He added, looking at the gleaming rings. Can you leave the village for so many days? Mabi took care of everything, no problem, the Seimeikage waved his hand. Come on, I really want to see Sarutobi's old man's expression and laugh. I heard you gave him a lesson. Oh. I looked at him with a hint of surprise. It seems like your ears in Konoha are quite good. It's basic, the Seimeikage shrugged as he entered the stadium with me after bidding farewell to my group, who would sit in the public stands. You didn't send your best genin to the exam, did you? I sent a team composed of genin from civilian backgrounds, but I didn't expect them to be eliminated in the first phase during the exam. He shook his head, clearly disappointed. It's a shame, they made people think my village is only full of brutes. You know that the news started leaking, I told him in the hallway. That old man Onaki still holds a grudge against you, the Seimeikage laughed. The positive part is that everything is so ridiculous that they don't trust the information that reached them, so we still have some margin to work with, he said shrewdly. Let's talk later. Sarutobi was never someone who respected privacy within his own village. Incredible. It seems that the fame of the third Hokage and his infamous crystal ball has transcended lands. We both reached the box reserved for the cages and the dignitaries of the daimyos, went through the boring polite chat with Sarutobi, and saw that the arrangement of the chairs was not to our liking, so we kicked them and both conjured up cloud chairs to make ourselves comfortable. Do you have those apples of yours? The Seimeikage asked. Always, I responded as I handed him one. I've heard about the fame of these fruits, would you be so kind as to provide me with one? From Sarutobi's side, Orochimaru leaned back in his chair and looked at me interested. I don't know why he wants one, as I understand that the man sustains himself on nutritious drinks to not waste time eating, but he still threw one to him. I just realized that this is the second time I've made Orochimaru eat an apple, in 2 different fanfictions, haha. Also, I find it interesting that having faced Raza several times in the past, the third Hokage didn't notice anything wrong in Orochimaru's way of speaking. Even the Seimeikage, who seems lost in the deliciousness of the apple, seems to feel that something is off without being able to pinpoint that it's because of the way his eyes move. Time passes, and the stadium fills up, approaching the time of the first match. What are your prospects for the final? Sarutobi asked, playing his role as a host and politician in front of the daimyo's representatives. There are 3 complete teams from Seimeigakure, Seimeigakure, and Konoha, so in reality, many people, among the civilians, consider the situation fairly balanced and expect a closely contested victory. Seimeigakure, Gaara, Temari, and Kankuro. Seimeigakure, Karin, Kimimaro, and Haku. Konoha, Shino, Koji, and Hinata. I'm going for your team. The Reikage doesn't hesitate to point to my kids and show his confidence in them. He always thought that if I can bring out the smiles and the artificial Byakugan, then I must have better things for my people. And he's not wrong. I think my children have a chance, Orochimaru replied, embodying his role as Raza. Poor choice of words, by the way. Raza hates Gaara and doesn't pay too much attention to the other two. So, being optimistic, oh, wait, in fact, Raza would say that to keep the face of his village even if it's not what he thinks. Well played, Orochimaru. Although the fact that you refer to them as children instead of ninjas gives you away a bit, but I understand that it's to unconsciously emphasize the fact that you are Raza and not someone else pretending to be him. My genin won't even break a sweat, I said matter-of-factly, given that the exam wasn't even a challenge for them and is more of a field experience. This old man still believes in the younger generation, Sarutobi laughed, playing the card of the kind grandfather who definitely didn't make the son of the village's savior condemned to ostracism to train him with the will of fire as if he were a dog. The live draw takes place to determine the opponents by drawing balls from a cardboard box, all very impartial, as if I'm going to believe it. Since the finals have an odd number of people, someone has to get the bye to skip a fight. And when the result comes out, I can only sigh because I almost expected it. Guess who gets it? I made a new level on my Patreon dedicated to those images that people ask for, especially for some scenes from my fanfics. I remember that, for example, many wanted to see Teiwa from my first FF with her change of look, since it will be the first of many that I will upload, I hope. I also put other things, these are some examples. Look at this. Basically if you like getting these things, this is made for you. Chapter 97, the finals begin. The fortunate person is none other than Hinata. I expected this for any of the Konoha members, ensuring they have a member with all the energy while the others will expend stamina or chakra in their initial battles. Among the three, she was the most likely. All three come from village clans, but the difference between Aberame and Akimichi compared to Hyuga, who faced off against the Uchiha in the past, is clear. It even smells a bit like bribery to ensure the heiress has this opportunity. Moreover, I'm sure we won't see something like Shino vs Koji, they won't risk it against each other at all. And it seems I'm right because the first match doesn't involve anyone from Konoha, so one of the two foreigners will be eliminated while the other reveals information for their future opponents. Who will face off now? Temari vs Kimimaro. Under normal circumstances, this match would have a clear disadvantage for Kimimaro. Temari is a long-range fighter, and although Kimimaro has some attacks like the bone bullets technique, he truly prefers taijutsu. But Kimimaro stopped being normal a long time ago, in a good way. Let the opponents come down to the field and take their respective positions. Genma calls them, and, oh, right, I forgot that Hay-8 must have been killed by this point. Anyway, it's not relevant, and I can't keep track of all the characters I remember. Wait, did Sarutobi confirm that he would change Naruto's last name in the end, or did I overlook it? That Kaguya boy has grown quite a bit, comments the Reikage as he leans forward a bit, taking me out of my train of thought. How about engaging him with one of my kunoichis? He asked, interested or several. He laughed, giving me the look that every man understands. He's still young, let him grow a bit more before asking him, I told the Reikage lazily. Although I know he's interested in the Kaguya clan's bloodline limit, I won't give Kimimaro a commitment if he's not interested in that. Besides, his descendants have a high chance of inheriting the golden bones for a few generations, and I think people would realize it has something to do with me or the village. Temari is examining Kimimaro up and down, and her first question to the stadium audience makes me choke on the apple while the Reikage starts laughing loudly. Are you going shirtless to imitate Pakura-sama's husband? Kimimaro blinks as he lowers his head to look at himself, and after a second of immobility, he nods seriously as if he did it on purpose. I know you didn't do it for that. Great, now it's not just Haku who has been corrupted. It's just that Kimimaro is tired of the scolding he receives from Karin for tearing kimonos during combat practice and finds it easier to move during a fight this way. Pakura is blushing in the stands, but I can see her happy smile from here. Well, I won't underestimate you, so I hope you go all out too, says Temari as she prepares, adopting a fighting stance and unfolding her giant fan, revealing the 3 painted purple moons. Agreed. Kimimaro unfolds his bone spikes and also adopts a stance. I'll say it once, and it will apply to all subsequent fights, announced Genma. If the opponent surrenders, cease your attack immediately. Victory will go to the other party if you become unconscious or something worse. Clear? He looked on both sides and raised his hand. Begin. Futon, sickle weasel. Temari doesn't waste a second, and the moment Genma raised his hand, she began releasing chakra for the wind technique. Kimimaro starts running towards her, crossing his arms as he passes through the cutting air currents, causing wounds on his body and revealing that beneath the skin, he is using his yellow bone armor. In the original story, he would need to activate the first stage of the Earth Curse mark, but it's incredible what intense long-term training with Seimeikage can achieve. This technique ended up emerging with the sole purpose of lasting longer against her, which it actually achieved, until Seimeikage increased the intensity to ensure breaking the armor, which are his bones, and making it stronger upon restoration. 10 finger-piercing bullets. Kimimaro shoots the phalanges of his fingers at Temari to gain time and finish covering the distance between them, but Temari jumps back after using another burst of air to disperse the bone projectiles. It's clear she wants to avoid close combat after witnessing how it turned out with Suzuki. I don't think she's thrilled about ending up full of holes in her body. And speaking of the little Uchiha, it seems that despite needing another month to recover, he came to watch the fights in a wheelchair with his legs bandaged like a mummy. Sakura is the one pushing the wheelchair from behind, of course. I wonder if the grimace on his face is from seeing Kimimaro, who took away his chance of ranking up, or because he has Naruto shouting by his side. Both are also possibilities. The fight continues like this for several minutes with a catching game, but Kimimaro seems to be losing patience, and Temari also seems annoyed by not having other ways to cause him significant damage after the revelation of the bone armor. She barely makes a few superficial cuts on his skin, and I think she's saving her aces in the sleeve for when the real attack begins, so it's a stalemate. I spoke too soon. I see Kimimaro stop his pursuit and raise his left hand. It seems the time has come to get serious. Dark water. His hand turns black and starts sucking forcefully. Temari seems to stick out her chest inappropriately due to the attraction of her body towards Kimimaro's hand, but she tries to resist by folding the fan and sticking it into the ground to have an anchor point. Yes, this is the fruit I gave to Kimimaro, Teach's dark fruit. Of course, it's not the genuine version, and I had to make many adjustments, like eliminating the flaw of causing double the pain, although being Kimimaro, he could probably endure it. In short, I discarded the part of stealing other powers in exchange for a more general use of gravity but keeping its dark recovery ability, so it's more like having a hybrid devil fruit that is half Logia and half Paramecia between Teach's Yami no Mi and Admiral Isho's Zushi no Mi. At the end of the day, the power in his hands is that of gravity and is very practical to ensure that his enemies are within reach of his bones, no matter how they try to distance themselves or escape. But that's his absolute limit, and believe me when I say I tried to make it more OP. I tried to take advantage and, by the way, add Shiki's Fuwa no Mi to the mix, which also essentially involves gravitational laws, but the fruit was unable to withstand the set of forces and collapsed on itself no matter what I tried, reduced to a pile of unappetizing looking mush. Well, I guess I'm the first to make a devil fruit that belongs to two different categories at the same time, even if it's partial, so it's really an achievement to feel satisfied with, in my opinion. And Kimimaro has no complaints, so everyone's happy. I don't remember the Kagaya clan being able to do that, Sarutobi comments as he watches Kimimaro, frowning. And do his bones seem to have undergone some kind of mutation? Raza comments with great interest, not taking his eyes off Kimimaro. Temari is unable to hold on as the suction force increases, and moments before being dragged, she hits the ground with her feet to generate additional momentum and prepares to strike with her giant fan, adopting a baseball pose. Kimimaro seems to have predicted Temari's action and adjusts his posture slightly. Large dance. A mass of sharp bone spicules grows all over his body as he advances as well, and Temari's expression changes from determined to scared, as if she doesn't find a way to avoid it, her fate will be even more tragic than Sasuke's. I don't know if it was a desperate act or a spontaneous idea, but instead of using the fan as a bat, she goes from using it as a shield, making sure her body is aligned behind the plates. Both collide, and a sound of metal collision resonates in the stadium, causing some people to feel dizzy. The good side is that Temari managed to avoid being impaled on Kimimaro's bones. The bad side is that the internal shock she received from the impact left her unconscious, so she was disqualified, giving the victory to Kimimaro. Chapter 98, Bad Feeling. After the referee declared Kimimaro the winner due to Temari's unconscious state, the first thing Kimimaro did was use his darkness/gravity to collect the bone fragments from the arena that flew when the impact occurred. This means that Temari's fan must have had a high proportion of chakra-infused metal because common iron can't damage Kimimoro's bones. Only when he saw that there were no more fragments, he nodded stoically and stepped back to make room for the next competitors. It's amusing to see Sarutobi and Orochimaru put on a sad expression at Kimimoro's performance because that means they won't be able to study the splinters for additional information. As for Kimimoro's care, it was naturally my advice for him. In the series, a lot of emphasis is placed on ensuring even corpses are handled specially to not give information to enemies if they fall into their hands, so I thought there's nothing wrong with being a bit cautious. The next match was between Kankuro and Shino, which didn't last too long thanks not only to Kankuro quickly surrendering to take care of his older sister but also because, knowing he's a puppeteer, Shino's insects effectively blocked the puppet's joints. That's the thing about his style, if the cat is out of the bag, there's little you can do unless you're on par with Sasori of the Red Sand. Shino wins. Next match, Koji vs Karin. I was interested to see if Koji would use any strategy against Karin or had thought of countermeasures, but to my disappointment and that of the spectators, he decided to surrender even faster than Kankuro, explaining in a single sentence. I can't even touch you, how am I supposed to fight? Boring, but wise. The moment he tried to hit Karin, I'm pretty sure she would make sure to give him a good burn. Perhaps strong enough to make him lose his appetite for barbecue for a very long time. But I hoped that Shikamaru or Asuma would help him think of ways to fight, even Ino might have thought of something, but no, I guess Karin is the kind of enemy that Koji and the Akimichi fear the most. Did it not occur to them to imitate what Haku did, using a ceiling scroll to release a lot of water or something? Seriously, in a few moments, I can think of at least 4 different strategies that he could try if I were in his place and wanted to give it a shot. Although it's also true that the thought processes of those who come from another world work in ways that native people can't quite understand. Hinata has the free pass, so the next match will be between the remaining competitors, Gaara vs Haku. Your boy might have a problem, the Reikage tells me, probably recognizing Gaara's Jinchuriki status. It's not like Tsunade made a great effort to hide his identity, what with Raza trying to kill his own son by sending assassins, unsuccessfully, the fact that the whole village is afraid of him, and his peculiar control of sand without any hand signs, which undoubtedly isn't the same as that used by his clan. And yet, he received better treatment for it than Naruto, at least, no one dares to look at him badly. Although the difficulty of sleeping must be extremely irritating. Wait. Sarutobi raised a hand and looked at both of us with disbelief written on his face. You said, Haku is a boy. His involuntary shout reached the nearby stands and left the spectators speechless, who soon echoed while struggling to believe what their beloved Hokage had just said. Isn't it obvious? I told him as the Reikage nodded seriously, although his clenched hands indicated that he was making a great effort not to burst into laughter. He was too busy sadistically enjoying Sarutobi's unfamiliar expression and didn't want to ruin it too soon. The best part is that even Orochimaru, who doesn't feel that it's important to have one gender or another as long as the body is useful for him, seems to be doubting life as he tries to discern from his position if it's true. The Yuki clan genes are really scary. The only one who seemed indifferent to the revelation was Gaara, as even Haku changed his expression when the truth was revealed and sighed. I know that expression, it's the same one he puts on when someone accidentally ruins a game he was secretly enjoying. I'm sure he wanted it to be him who made the big reveal, perhaps after finishing the fight when everyone congratulates him, and he's at his zenith. Oh, yes, the reproachful look he's giving Sarutobi confirms it. I think I just saw Tsunade laugh and collect money from the people next to her in the stands, who, with a desolate expression and some tears running down their cheeks, hand her some bills. Did she scam them by making them bet on Haku's gender? Well, I'm straightening up now, and I'm really getting serious as I pay attention to the stadium. Tsunade won a bet. Tomorrow. Teiwa in kimono. On my Patreon. Over and out. Chapter 99, Porshikaku. The Reikage, Hokage, and Orochimaru shifted their positions slightly after seeing me straighten up and furrow my brow. Perhaps for them, it gives the impression that I think sending the Jinchuriki to compete isn't fair. They have no idea that my concern is that Tsunade wins a bet. In fact, after counting the bills, it seems that she also realizes what just happened, and her expression is no longer so joyful. She looks around cautiously, not forgetting to tuck the money into her pockets. Ready? Haku nods, while Gaara continues with his constipated expression, and the fight officially begins. Haku intends to repeat his performance by throwing a scroll with sealed water, but Gaara scents the sand fast enough to prevent it from opening in the air. This makes many furrow their brows, thinking that since the sand has no moisture to exploit, Haku, as a member of the Yuki clan, will be at a disadvantage. The truth is, Haku never needed the water from the scroll to use his techniques, he simply gives an illusion of dependence and makes people believe that it's an exploitable weakness. In other words, it's a performance to create a non-existent weak point. He also knows some water techniques, courtesy of Seimeikage, that could play the same role, generating moisture in case of fighting in an extremely dry environment. Seeing that the trick can't be used, Haku tries to use his senbons to swiftly attack Gaara, but the sand automatically blocks the needles whose target is parts of the human body that would cause paralysis upon hitting. Gaara sends more and more sand to try to catch Haku, but he can't match his speed of movement and resorts to more extreme measures, literally sending waves of sand to cover Haku from 3 different directions. Haku has no choice but to jump, and that's where things turn against him because at the moment the sand waves collide, they generate an eruption that propels the sand upward, managing to trap Haku's legs. "I got you." Gaara puts on his crazy expression and extends his hand open like a claw while starting to manipulate the sand to form a cocoon around Haku, who tries to free himself without success. The Reikage looks at me, and even Sarutobi can't help but divert his gaze for a moment to see my expression, both puzzled because I don't seem worried about Haku's imminent and brutal death. I shake an apple in front of the Reikage, and he seems to understand something, returning his gaze to the sand with interest. Sarutobi, on the other hand, is even more confused by our interaction. Is it some kind of secret fruit-based code? Desert funeral. Gaara tightens his outstretched hand, and everyone inhales horrified as they see how the sand cocoon compresses forcefully, clearly shrinking in size and imagining Haku's tragic fate. But the ninjas present quickly realize that the scene is off. There's no blood. Someone shouts, followed by exclamations of amazement when more people realize that and what it means. Gaara is clearly confused, he must have felt familiarly that what he crushed was a real body, so he doesn't understand why not only is there no blood, but when he opens the sand cocoon, not even a single hair is left. Interesting, Orochimaru comments as he and everyone watch how Haku reappears in the sand when particles of light begin to gather to form his perfectly healthy, unblemished, beautiful figure without the slightest discomfort. And so, the Logia fruits give their first demonstration to the ninja world. At the same time, I also hope that Haku's slip-up is the accident of Tsunade's bet, which fortunately seems to have had only some minor, insignificant gains. Did he combine the substitution technique with some kind of light clone? Sarutobi pondered aloud but loud enough for all of us to hear. As expected from the one with the title of professor, he already theorized a possible way to explain what happened in front of him. If there's a shadow clone, what's stopping there from being one of light? Logical. But Orochimaru doesn't seem to agree with his former teacher, not with the way he's looking at Haku, as if he sees something extremely interesting. Perhaps feeling my gaze, he laughs and holds back his interest to continue acting as Raza, prioritizing dealing with the third Hokage. It's better not to have weird ideas, I wouldn't mind a bit of intimidation. Give me your blood. Gaara shouted as if he were a vampire, and his body began to change. I need your blood. Wow. I knew Gaara's partial transformation was ugly, but seeing it up close is really something else. That look, the drool falling from his mouth, and the tremors only add more disgust to the matter. This unconsciously makes me think of something. Why is Shikaku's Jinchuriki the only one who looks ugly halfway transformed? No, seriously, I don't remember the other Jinchurikis having that issue. They had the initially semi-transparent chakra cloak that bubbled, the wilder version with red streaks, and the full transformation if they were perfect, but nothing halfway done like Gaara. Okay, Fu can use Komei's wings, but she's adorable. Even Naruto only shows things like eye color changes, nail growth, and teeth sharpening at most before moving on to the chakra cloak phase. Did the Sage of the Six Paths use Shikaku's creation for practice? Like making a sand castle. He sculpts it and then shakes his head to rebuild it again until he gets what he's looking for. Then he saw he did it wrong and knew how to do the rest correctly, but he forgot to correct his first attempt. Does the theory seem quite possible? Chapter 100, Assault on Konoha. My thoughts were interrupted the moment Orochimaru appeared behind Sarutobi, and the people in the stands began to fall asleep, reminding me that, indeed, the important part was beginning now. Seimeikage and Pakura had disappeared at some point, carrying out their part of the plan, while Anko, Tsunade, and the others gathered to form a secure group. "How long, sensei?" Orochimaru said as he removed his mask, making his grand entrance. "Orochimaru." Sarutobi's expression darkened. "What have you done to the Kazekage? What's happening?" I couldn't help asking as he got into a defensive stance. I stood up, causing Orochimaru to pay attention just long enough to make it clear that I don't care about what he's doing. "I think things are going to get complicated," I said as I turned around, showing little interest or surprise in the events. "It seems that Konoha has internal matters to resolve." "Not my problem," I expressed my stance. The Reikage recognized Orochimaru and seemed regretful as he distanced himself from the student-teacher duo to follow me, surely lamenting not being able to take advantage of whatever is about to happen for the benefit of Seimeigakure. By the time he manages to send information to his village, everything will have calmed down, and Konoha will be on high alert. "Don't you want to seize a piece of the pie with this chaos?" he asked, tempting me to act once we were far enough away. "Who says I'm not doing that now?" I replied. He's bewildered for a second before looking at my people and realizing that some are missing. He laughs as he pats me on the shoulder. "So, you knew something was going to happen," he declares, unable to completely hide the surprise in his eyes. "I suspected something was wrong the moment Seimeigakure sent out its unstable Jinchuriki, so I made contingency plans just in case," I clarified with a convenient and believable lie. "It's always useful to have them." "What if I help you?" the Reikage asked, feeling his fists itching. "For a share of the loot, you know." I pretended to ponder for a moment before nodding. "How about this? I'll give you 5 smiles in exchange for Sarutobi Asuma's head. An exaggerated price as far as I'm concerned since his abilities are not that high, and his identity carries more weight." 6 and 2 pairs of eyes, the Reikage bargained, trying to scrape some additional benefits. He didn't even care or ask why I wanted him dead, he was just an easy target for him, and he was already counting his gains. "The smiles or the eyes, you decide." "Deal." The Reikage grinned wildly as he covered himself with his lightning armor and disappeared to locate his victim. "This is great, I don't even have to dirty my hands to eliminate Asuma. No wonder it's so common to assign missions to ninjas, it's so convenient." I turn around to see that Gaara has not been removed from the sand yet and take the Den Mushi to make a call. "Lord Enel." Haku answers from his own Den Mushi. "Haku, do you remember the phrase about the kick I taught you?" After hearing the confirmation, I added, "Well, I think it's time for you to use it unless you want Konoha to be dyed red. It's not that we care about what happens to the village, but the death of the high-ranking officials will already cause a big problem. If Konoha's damages are too significant, they'll be bothering Tsunade to return to the village. She's not coming back, she made that very clear." "I don't think it's necessary, Lord Enel." "Why is that?" "The Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, along with his team, just charged against him and provoked him to get him out of the village by order of a Konoha Jonin with white hair," Haku explains. "Gaara's brothers have followed him, and I really don't know what to do. I feel ignored," he said with a aggrieved voice. A row of question marks above my head jumped into view. Is the plot somehow correcting itself, or is the chakra reincarnated in Naruto forcing him to act without being aware of it? Well, just regroup with the others and remember to be vigilant for tricks from the shadows. Understood, he affirmed before hanging up. He put away the Den Mushi, and I began actively searching with my mantra as I moved quickly through the village, trying to locate Danzo and his roots. I can feel Pakura in the Hokage's office, storing a bunch of documents and scrolls. I knew she wouldn't settle for just the seal scroll. Seimeigakure already eliminated Koharu and is setting up the scene to frame the culprit towards Seimeigakure, so I don't think it will be long before she goes after Homura. Where the hell is Danzo? I was able to find some of his hidden men, but I can't read their minds. Aha! There's a hidden base in the mountain of the Hokage's faces, and the entrance is in Tobirama's nose? Isn't Danzo supposed to have great respect for his master? Wait, maybe it's a subtle way of getting revenge for the Hokage's choice back then. Although, it's a bit childish. Inside Tobirama's rock head. "Danzo-sama, Orochimaru's attack has begun," reported an emotionless masked man. "Our men are ready to collect useful bodies from the clans and blame Seimeigakure for their disappearance." "I see," Danzo nodded, seated in the dim light of a candle on the table. "Keep me informed of everything and remember to pay attention to the Uzumaki women. If possible, take advantage of the chaos to bring them here. Yes. The man jumped to vanish into the darkness, leaving Danzo alone in the room. Let's see how you get out of this, Saru, Danzo taunted internally with satisfaction. If you die, I'll be the next Hokage. If you don't die, you'll have to resign for this mistake and let me be the Hokage. No matter the outcome, you won't be able to yell at my face that you're the Hokage to shut me up. The candle flame fluctuated, and Danzo opened his eyes, looking around cautiously. Not finding anything, he sighed, attributing the blame to his unusual nerves for finally managing to oust his old friend from the seat that should have belonged to him. Moreover, this room was old and built by his cunning master, so the erosion of time could have caused some small holes. Contrary to what others might believe, the reason he liked to have a candle always near when sitting in the dark was how sensitive they are to drafts. If there's a change, the flame reacts even before he does. What should be the first thing to do when I become Hokage? He pondered. He had so many plans in his mind after years of dreaming of the position that he simply couldn't decide in the short term which one to start with. The candle flame fluctuated again, but this time Danzo didn't pay it much attention as he got lost in his thoughts, a rare luxury he almost never had in recent years. So, he wasn't aware of the tall man behind him who had heard his orders and gave him a cruel smile in the pure style of solo leveling. After that day's incident, no one ever saw Shimura Danzo again. A few minutes later, Enel came out with a strange arm wrapped in cloth and stored it in a universal capsule, happy to get the strange arm to study. Puru puru puru. Puru puru puru. Kakug. Here, Enel, what's happening? He asked, puzzled by the sudden call. Dad. Fu's teary voice came, and she told him what had just happened. As he listened, Enel's expression darkened more and more, and if it weren't for his self-control, the Den Mushi would have been incinerated. He took a deep breath and asked the most important question. Who was it? He asked calmly to Fu through the Den Mushi. Who is responsible for Mikato's death? Chapter 101, title at the end. The news of Mikato's death left my mind blank for a second. Not only because I felt rage growing inside me, but also because I had given her a fruit that made it quite difficult to harm her through conventional means. Bartolomeo's barrier fruit. Fu made it clear that Mikato had erected a barrier around our group to protect everyone, so the person who killed Mikato must have resorted to some special trick not only to pass through the barrier but also to eliminate Mikato in a way that Mariko's seal didn't activate in time. I took out a special flare that I hoped I wouldn't have to use and shot it into the sky, creating a unique sound that everyone in the village could recognize. Pakura's looting frenzy stopped when she heard the sound, gritting her teeth. Aimei's smile, after eliminating Homura, seemed to disappear as both of them jumped out. Suddenly, in different places in Konoha, three giants embodying the force of nature seemed to grow and materialize as they rushed towards the stadium. A man bathed in thunder, with wind-whipped hair, holding an enormous trident containing a thunderous power while a gleaming dragon roared at his feet. A sandstorm that seemed to have gained consciousness, occasionally showing the face of a furious woman indiscriminately draining the water from all the unfortunate ninjas who failed to react in time and move away. A torrent of flames exploded in the sky and converged into a huge bird of pure fire that plummeted from the sky, leaving behind a red trail of heat. Thunder sprouted from its claws, falling like rain on the unfortunate ones. When the three arrived above the stadium, their words combined to resonate powerfully, making all the ninjas, whether from Tsunade, Otagakure, or Konoha, look at them horrified by the display of pure power. Inoichi Yamanaka, pay for your mistake with your life. Before anyone could even process the words, the giant Thunderman attacked a specific spot in the stadium, where the Yamanaka clan patriarch watched them with a completely pale expression, and in the next half-second, the other two giants unleashed massive attacks without caring about anything else in the same place. Sandstorms capable of tearing flesh from bones, fire extinguishing all forms of life, and thunder that would eliminate any chance of survival. Under the mantra, no matter what desperate trick or trump card Inoichi tried to perform, he had no chance of escaping once he was targeted. Even the battle between Orochimaru and Sarutobi was momentarily suspended as they watched without understanding what had just happened for someone to deserve such a display of power. Orochimaru suddenly felt that provoking Seimeigakure for some interesting individuals might not be such a good idea, while Sarutobi inwardly regretted the death of the patriarch of one of the clans most loyal to his cause and faction. After all, he had ordered him that if the opportunity arose, he should target some members of Seimeigakure to gather information from their minds, regardless of the cost. Clearly, the Yamanaka patriarch considered that the chaos in the village was a good cover, and he used the secret techniques of his clan to steal the information. But something must have gone wrong during the process, and he accidentally killed the person he possessed, resulting in this reaction. Do you remember the crack that Mikoto had in her soul? Well, let's say that the Yamanaka clan's techniques are the worst for her condition, that's why the seal to save her couldn't activate in time. Just clarifying in case someone didn't understand. The worst part is that even with everything said and done, Inoichi didn't manage to pass the precious stolen information in time before dying. It was a complete loss for Konoha. After this incident, he will declare Seimeigakure an enemy of Konoha. Decided. Did the Yamanaka clan patriarch provoke someone? The ninja next to him asked, confused. It seems so, brother, things have fallen into a regrettable state in our absence, sighed another figure. Although I am interested in learning more about these people, I have never seen a jutsu like this. Hashirama and Tobirama still retained their consciousness as they watched in amazement the disproportionate attack against one of their most famous clans. But both could see that it was not planned, clearly, it was a reaction to something the current generation patriarch had done. Didn't the Mizuki clan have something similar? Hashirama asked with doubts. It's not like the hydration jutsu, Tobirama denied as he covered his face with his palm, recognizing the difference with his keen eye. Enough talk. Orochimaru suddenly felt a bit impatient and placed a kunao with a special seal he developed on their heads. He wanted to finish off his master before there was a chance for those people to change their minds and end up becoming an obstacle. Meanwhile, outside Konoha, Shikaku had finally emerged from Gaara and was facing Naruto and Gamabunta transformed into the Nine-Tails Fox. The battle seemed to be at its climax when the ground suddenly shook, and the three unconsciously looked at the source of the tremor. They saw three figures even larger than Shikaku attacking the same point again and again. For a second, Shikaku couldn't comprehend what he was seeing since he had never encountered anything that could be bigger than him or his brothers. Could they have more siblings, and the old man didn't tell them? It shouldn't be possible, there was no more chakra from the Ten Tails to use after its creation. But that gigantic sand figure could very well be their mother. The strange thing was that, although he could feel the chakra in two of the three giants, it didn't seem to match their sizes at all, which left him even more confused. Title: Shikaku's mother? Drop some power stones or something, you know I don't usually ask for them. I have the feeling that he wanted to say something else, which was. I don't remember if I said it, so just in case, the corresponding Tsunade FF has already started on my Patreon and we're almost 50 chapters in, you can join if you are interested. In a while I will upload it here as always, be patient if you prefer to wait. Now a question for you, if you came to the world of Naruto, which of the three wise lands would you make a contract with if you were given a chance? Chapter 102, Shock in Konoha. The Reikage, who had just sealed Asuma's head in a sealing scroll after giving him a quick and unexpected death, couldn't help but swallow when he saw the massive bombardment that the Yamanaka patriarch received, somehow managing to seriously anger his friend. He couldn't have been happier to have avoided using tough tactics the first time they met, although Oniki might need some sedatives if his spies reported what had happened. As far as A knew, Oniki's granddaughter was still hanging on to Enel even after all these years, causing a massive headache for her grandfather to take her to visit the village of Seimeigakure. But Oniki could only refuse over and over with helplessness because he had no idea where she was. Damn, even he, the Reikage, who had been doing business with them for years, didn't know where that place was. When they spoke during the confrontation of the Sand Village's Jinchuriki and the Yuki clan child, he thought he had seen some strange variant of the fruits they traded, but this. Were they still the same fruits? But he didn't even think for a moment about trying to add whatever power that was to his shopping basket. Without a doubt, it was one of the central secrets of Seimeigakure. The researcher in Kumigakure had tried to replicate the smiles, but all they managed to get were fruits with a terrible taste, no abilities or animal traits. So they stopped wasting resources trying to replicate this and invested in studying artificial Byakugan, hoping to obtain something useful. They didn't get the expected results, much less, but there was a big breakthrough in the ophthalmology medical department. Maybe I can be the one to invite them to support me in a confrontation against Konoha. The fact that they now had a greater grudge against this village fueled his idea. But he really couldn't think of what to offer them. Wait. He remembered that before leaving, Mabi had informed him that the adoption of the Seven Tails Jinchuriki by Enel had been confirmed. Perhaps he could use the Turtle Island, which Kumigakure owned on the back of a large turtle named Genbu, as payment. They were of great help in turning a Jinchuriki into a perfect Jinchuriki. But A frowned at the thought of the presence of the slug princess and her apprentice Shizun in Seimeigakure, which could complicate his plan to collaborate, as they would undoubtedly pose opposition. Shaking his head, he considered taking advantage of the chaos and see if he could get some more loot before quietly leaving Konoha. After this display of power, he didn't believe that Enel and company would stay. He could exchange the head of the third Hokage's son when they came to deliver the next Smiles order. Back in the Sand Village. Enel's POV. Orochimaru and the third Hokage resumed their fight when it was confirmed that I wasn't paying attention or providing support. Why would I? Knowing what I know about Orochimaru or Sarutobi, I had no interest in helping either side, and everything would end soon. Once Inoichi Yamanaka's death was confirmed, the three of us approached our group and reduced the power output of the Logias, getting closer to take a closer look at the rest. Nimue? I asked after scanning with my eyes to make sure everyone was okay. Here, knowing what I meant, she showed me a universal capsule in the palm of her hand. The capsule where Mikato's body was stored. I rubbed the back of my neck out of sheer frustration as I approached to comfort a tearful Fu, who hadn't stopped shedding tears since the incident. But now wasn't the time to linger. I shifted my gaze to Tsunade, and she understood, shaking her head as she approached us. With a series of seals, Mariko performed a summoning technique for a large enough Kinton cloud for all of us, and we used it to leave, facing the incomprehensible gazes of the Seimeigakure and Konoha ninjas. There were no threats, no declarations, or farewells. The culprit was dead, the one who gave the order was about to be tormented for eternity in the stomach of a strange entity. I could see how the Shinigami of the ninja world was struggling to tear Orochimaru's arms off, and I'm sure everyone in Konoha is clear that they messed up. Now they know that my village is a force to be carefully considered, their high-ranking officials have died or disappeared, they have suffered a blow to their reputation that will affect the missions their village receives due to the loss of people's trust, the direct line of succession of the Sarutobi clan has been cut, Konohamaru is still a kid, the support of the Shimura clan is nowhere to be found from here to eternity, causing an internal hyena conflict to assume the position of power. That will also significantly weaken them, the loss of their historic seal scroll. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of the problems they will have in the coming months. Who will take the position of the fifth Hokage? Because Tsunade certainly won't. The pale expression on Shikaku Nara's face betrays that he must have deduced what happened for his friend and ally Yamanaka to end up like this. Also, the fact that Tsunade Senju or Shizun Sato left with us. They didn't even heal a single ninja from Konoha, so I can basically confirm that the last descendant of one of the two founding clans is so disappointed with the village that she openly deserted. Forget the expression that shit will hit the fan when this news spreads around the world, it would be more appropriate to say that a septic tank has collided with a reactor. The positive part is that Jiraya's absence prevented me from killing him in the heat of the moment. I'm sure he would have tried to do something just with the situation, using his smile and humor to smooth things over, and frankly, I'm not in the mood to put up with his antics or prophecies. At least Sasuke didn't witness his mother's death again, who knows how frantic he would have gotten. Tsunade seems to think the same, but I know that even if she has given up on Konoha, Jiraya has his own share on her conscience after so many years on the same team. I don't blame her, I know she'll be in a tough position. The negative part is that Lee won't get Tsunade as a surgeon for the much-needed operation, and he'll have to stop being a ninja definitively. Because if he still insists on being operated on, the probability of death is enormous if I understand his case correctly. I'm one of those who support Lee for his effort and attitude of self-improvement despite the mockery of others, and leaving aside his strange personality, so I actually feel a little uncomfortable writing this outcome. But I never saw a fanfic where Lee does not recover, and I want to reflect on what would happen. To be honest, I wouldn't mind if he told me he wants to operate on him or had healed some of his friends. He would be taking care of his friendships instead of Konoha ninjas. But Tsunade seems to know that once she starts, she won't be able to stop, and I respect her decision. Now I have to think whether to mess with Earth Pure or let Mikato rest. Chapter 103, Free Soul. We had a kind of debate/vote on the possible return of Mikato, and the results made everyone's position clear, it's better to let the dead rest. Anko shared with us what little she knew about mental techniques, as she worked in the torture department as an assistant to some Yamanaka clan members a few weeks before she left with me, an additional reason for her depressed state back then, who came up with the idea to put her there at her age, and it was simply a terrible idea. Fu was somewhat hesitant and even suggested once using the impure world resurrection, and I still wonder who told her about that technique, but we managed to explain that it wasn't as straightforward as it might seem. It would not only take me a considerable amount of time to understand how to interact with the Pure Land, but Mikato's soul would be even worse off than when I rescued her from the Uchiha massacre if I took her out of there using the wrong methods. Given the years it took her to recover partially and that everyone had grown attached to her, regardless of her condition and necessary care, we really don't have enough audacity to make her go through all that again just because we want her here. In summary, the body was never the problem, but her damaged soul and mental state. Now, at least, she can be with her clan, with enough free time to effectively recover from that damn rift and give Fugaku a lecture, and a suitable beating, for what he tried to do to her. I hope she gives him a good punch from me, the damn indecisive incompetent. So. Tsunade had been silent for a while since we returned to the village. What is our stance on Konoha now? Everyone stopped talking and looked at me synchronously. How scary. First, let's see who takes the position of Hokage and how they decide to respond, I said, because I was interested in seeing if there was a chance for the village to recover or if it would continue rotting from within, but we can't lower our guard completely for a few weeks. By eliminating the Yamanaka clan patriarch, we offended them completely along with the Nara and Akimichi. I wouldn't even be surprised if new bounties appeared for us in the black market. Although Akimichi is not a threat, and the only dangerous thing about the Nara is their mind. You can count on it, Seimeikage affirmed as she lazily stretched her arms. I give them 3 days at most, if they can calm the waves of the attack quickly and try to diminish the opinion of weakness shown. Mariko, I called. I hope you can work with Karin and Nimue on a mental protection fuinjutsu and some details that I will give you later in a list. It seems that after these years, we'll have to update everyone's seal to prevent this from happening again, and we can't be too complacent. In reality, no one else should die if they are victims of the same technique, as they don't have a damaged soul, but as the saying goes, the mind is an inviolable temple and our last refuge. The idea that someone could enter without permission is as frightening as it is infuriating. That's why I always thought telepaths like Charles Xavier are better off dead. No matter what promises of morality and control they make, at the end of the day, they will do what they consider necessary or convenient. Leave it to us, Dad. Nimue hit her chest firmly, shaking it. Yes, I think I have some ideas that could be helpful. Sensei Karin raised her glasses as the light reflected in the lenses. I've been thinking about that since we left Konoha. It will be nice to have something to distract me. Mariko nodded, accepting the challenge ahead. A considerable one, I must add. Now I turned to Pakura and Seimeikage. How did everything go? I know Seimeikage achieved everything, but I'm interested in knowing what else Pakura got during her robbery and if something unexpected happened before Mikato's situation. After all, I got a little creative with what I did to Danzo and didn't pay much attention until I finished with him. Who would have thought he had such a sadistic and cruel side? I'm scared of myself when I remember it. It's chilling. Maybe it was because of what I heard him say? Let's forget it. Think about kittens. The old ones are history. Seimeikage jumped forward to hug me, and we exchanged a quick kiss while she rested her head on my shoulder. Falsifying the scene was simple. Those bags of bones didn't even have a jonin as a bodyguard. They relied solely on some alert seals and escape routes, nothing that posed a real challenge. But Seimeikage's tone tells me she's not telling everything, and I can tell she's holding back an even bigger smile. But I knew it. I learned a couple of things from my sister, she said, glancing at Pakura while licking her lips. I had to pinch her butt subtly to make her control herself a bit. I think she's still agitated, and the kids are still present, and I decided to search her offices while altering the scene, resulting in finding some interesting things. She took out a storage scroll and opened it in front of everyone. From the scroll came out more scrolls. I feel a bit stupid for expecting something else. What are they about? Anko stepped forward and took one to open and check its content. Wow, if these things were made public, we wouldn't even need to kill them. This piqued my interest, and I also took a scroll, like Shizuan, Tsunade, and the others. Damn, if I had known that this kind of damning evidence existed, I could have saved many problems. I guess knowledge of the series limits me at times. Suggestions? I asked. This information was worth a lot, but only for certain people, and it had to be handled carefully if we wanted to take advantage of it. I think the fire daimyo would be quite interested in this, Anko commented, showing that smile that meant someone was going to have nightmares at night. This would help him immensely in keeping Konoha in check for a while. Konoha couldn't divert attention to cause us problems, and we could earn a favor. The idea was actually not bad, very clever indeed. I turned my gaze to Karin, and an unfinished matter crossed my mind. I knew exactly what to spend that favor on, something within the power of the fire daimyo and probably one of the few useful things we can get out of that fat sack. I think Anko has also earned a kiss. After separating, and leaving her leaning on my other shoulder, it's Pakura's turn to show what loot she managed to obtain during the chaos of the assault on Konoha. And from the confident expression she has, I think she knows I'll also kiss her. Chapter 104, Konoha's Losses. After the revelation that the conspiracy of Seimeigakure was driven by the traitor Orochimaru, who ended up fleeing the village after taking the life of the third Hokage at the cost of a significant injury to his arms, Konoha focused on tallying its losses and tending to the wounded. But the ninjas of Konoha were distracted and nervous, even after the events had concluded. Remembering the giants that appeared and reduced the Yamanaka clan patriarch to nothing as if crushing a fly, they couldn't help but shiver down their spines and curse the man in their minds for provoking those individuals. And he had to do it in the midst of the Seimeigakure attack. They knew nothing about the orders he received from the third Hokage, and those who did know died at the hands of Seimeikage, so the Yamanaka clan not only lost its leader due to what seemed like an impulsive action but also had to bear the burden of being blamed for seeking trouble with Seimeigakure instead of defending the village and generating unnecessary enmity. It didn't take long to discover the absence of orders from above, and after sending people to investigate, they found not only the likely deaths of the third Hokage's two advisors at the hands of Seimeigakure but also that Danzo seemed to have disappeared into thin air to the point that even his route was bewildered. In the absence of people in charge, Shikaku Nara had no choice but to take command despite his reluctance, as he was the closest in status as the chief strategist of the third Hokage, and his reputation backed him as competent. He found some inconsistencies in the information that passed through the makeshift table to read reports and issue orders. Danzo's disappearance was strange, especially considering that his men didn't even help during the attack and were temporarily detained until the matter was clarified. Among the few deceased, apart from the advisors, he was struck by the death of the remaining son of the third Hokage, Sarutobi Asuma, which was identified late because he was missing his head. Shikaku grimaced. It seemed that little Ino was going to suffer a shock of devastating proportions by losing her father and teacher on the same day. He should remind his lazy son to spend more time with her. He couldn't face his friend if anything happened to his daughter under his watch. Even if he was sure that what Inoichi did was on orders from the third Hokage, there were simply no proofs or records to demonstrate it and clear his name. So troublesome. Once he finished the part about human losses, he moved on to material losses. Fortunately, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki managed to get Gaara out of the village, otherwise, the losses would have been astronomical. He seriously doubted that the war shelters designated for civilians could withstand an attack from a tailed beast. Not that the third Hokage used the best materials to build them, to say the least. Some residential buildings were damaged by widespread techniques and cracked streets, nothing that a month of work couldn't fix for a capable construction company. Has there been any response from the Sunin, Jiraya? Shikaku asked, taking the next document. Yes, we received a toad that informed us that he was on his way to the village. Do we know how long it will take? The village was at a vulnerable point, and they needed all the available deterrent force. With his speed, it will be 3 days at most. That was an acceptable margin. Shikaku raised an eyebrow before lowering it again and merging it with the other. Are you sure that what's here is correct? He asked with a grave tone. Shikaku-san, we checked it twice to be sure, within our capabilities, confirmed the Anbu ninja. Although the information in their hands should only fall into the hands of the next Hokage, they were in dire need of someone to take charge and give orders to coordinate everyone temporarily. It says here that the vaults of the Shimura and Sarutobi clans have been attacked and emptied, leaving behind nothing more than a hole that seems to have been sanded with sand, recited Shikaku with a voice that was anything but happy. That the scroll of seals, which has been in Konoha since its founding and had forbidden techniques desired by the whole world, has disappeared because someone opened the seals and took it. Isn't it supposed that only the Hokage knows them? He rubbed his forehead with exasperation as he continued. A large number of scrolls covering techniques from rank D to rank A from the hidden reserve, sensitive medical material such as new hybrid plants or recently developed equipment. The Uchiha heir has complained that the library of his family has been raided without leaving anything behind. Banks are crying because the emergency gold reserves for times of war have vanished into thin air. Ichiraku Ramen reports that someone stole their family recipe book. Half of Tenten's family's weaponry disappeared. Kunaus, explosive tags, shurikens, senbons, special weights, special sealing ink. The Binako erotic clothing store is left without a single piece. The new books from the public library disappeared. The Aberame clan reported that many species of insects and animals from the Forest of Death have disappeared. The Hikari music store in the central square no longer has its best instruments. The practice dummies of the Ninja Academy were stolen. The Matsumoto liquor store declared that their barrels with the best sake, wine, and shaku are no longer there. Nyako cuisine's rare and valuable spices were all looted, and have all the dango in the village disappeared? Shikako looked at the Anbu ninja with an expression as if he was being teased, and the latter could only shrug. It wasn't him who had made the report and mixed the important things with the trivial ones. With no other option, Shikako decided to act maturely and hit his forehead against the table, letting out a grunt of frustration as a stream of tears fell like a cascade from the table. For things like this, the Nara clan didn't want to get involved in such troublesome matters. He just had to endure 3 days, and he could throw everything at Jiraya, so let's delay the unnecessary things for 3 days, and he would take care of it. Far from Konoha, the so-called wise toad felt a chill down his spine that made him lose his balance and fall flat on the ground from the treetops, where he was jumping from branch to branch. He looked left and right while covered in leaves, dust, and dirt. Why did he have a bad feeling? Meanwhile, in Seimeigakure, after a few days, they had held a mourning ceremony for Mikoto, and now time was going to be the best medicine for people like Haku and Fu, who were more sensitive. The island was on its way to the capital of the Land of Fire, where they intended to meet with the daimyo and do some business. Pakura left her abundant loot throughout the Sky Island in their respective areas, so it could be utilized, and everyone could be distracted. And indeed, everyone was busy with different projects to keep their minds occupied. Even Enel ended up almost exhausted with a slight weight loss, as he conducted a careful and energetic quality control every night with the simultaneous help of Pakura, Anko, and Seimeikage when they decided to test the endurance of certain new clothing in a private nighttime fashion show. Chapter 105, The Capital of Fire. Are you okay, Dad? Fu asked, concerned. She, along with Kimimaro, Maki, Karin, and Haku, decided to accompany me to the capital to see one of the most prosperous places and satisfy their curiosity. After 2 hours of sightseeing, we entered a restaurant, and currently, I have a small mountain of plates accumulated on the table, while my stomach still shows no signs of swelling. I'll be fine, just need a little sleep, and I'll be as good as new, I replied as I took out some apples for dessert for everyone. I had made a great effort to console the turbulent emotions of my women for days, and now I find myself in need of regaining strength. Fortunately, the logic of a One Piece character applies here. If you're exhausted, eat and you'll be as good as new after a nap. Pakura was particularly excited about the looting. Anko had been restless since the death of the third Hokage was confirmed, and Seimeikage, she didn't need a reason to join the fun, just her words. After paying the restaurant using some small gold ingots, I admit, maybe I overdid it this time eating. We left and made our way to the daimyo's castle. Now, how can we arrange a meeting with the most powerful man? Answer, we don't. Here, I must note that Shizune was of great help since Tsunade came to treat the daimyo, his wife, or one of his concubines several times while wandering and needing more money to gamble. As her apprentice, she was not denied entry, and thanks to her good memory, she had in her head a partial part of the castle's plans involving the most likely places where we could find him. So, just as ninjas would do, we sneaked into the castle until we found the daimyo in one of the 9 inner gardens the place had. Guards! He shouted, as predictable as I expected. The funny part? No one responded to his cries, and when he realized that little detail, he seemed to adopt a resigned attitude. Who paid you? He asked us. I'll pay triple for their heads. Tempting, but we're not here to kill you or harm you in any way, I replied as I and the others sat on cloud chairs that I pulled out of a universal capsule. Rather, I want to make a very lucrative deal with you. And couldn't you have asked for a date? He responded, sad but relieved to know that we weren't going to end his life. Too slow, I shook my head as I threw a cloud couch next to him. Try it, it's better than baby duck feather-filled cushions. I'll give you this as an apology for the scare, and I can sell you more if you want. The man sat without fear or ceremony. I respected that. He realized that if we wanted him dead, it wasn't necessary to go through so many headaches. Perhaps the daimyo might be small in the series, but he still has the political instinct that allowed him to survive his brothers. Do you have a king-size bed version? He asked me after a few seconds. Of course, I can deliver it to you tomorrow if you want. It will take approximately an hour in the machine, and it's easy to transport, so if that allows us to have a pleasant conversation, I won't refuse. Alright, then, can I ask which ninja village you are from? He clearly noticed the headbands on my thigh and the children, very observant. Seimeigakure. The same one that annihilated the head of the Yamanaka clan from Konoha. He raised an eyebrow in surprise. Wow, I didn't expect that. It seems that information travels fast, although it's also true that we've been on the road for days when we could have arrived earlier. But I had my hands full. And what kind of business do you think I could do with you? The daimyo asked while waving the fan in front of his face. Why the hell do they use that thing like this? I never understood it. What do you think about gaining more control over some matters in Konoha? You have my interest. He seemed to try to straighten up, but then realized he was too comfortable and gave up. I have information here that could interest you a lot and be useful to you, I said as I pulled out the scrolls that my wonderful Seimeikage acquired. With it, your influence in Konoha would double at least passively. The daimyo is clearly interested in the way he is looking at the scrolls. And what would you want in return for this information? He questioned, waving the damn fan more quickly. I can't name you the official ninja village of the Land of Fire, there are many laws to navigate, and there are no precedents. That honor is not necessary, I didn't even think about asking for that nonsense. Actually, I was hoping to be able to establish a business in the capital with this, I said, hitting the cloud furniture I was sitting on. A little publicity from the daimyo would work wonders. I would also like you to hear a case and issue a verdict. A case? The daimyo's expression became more serious because any case that had to be handled personally by him had strong implications. I gestured to Karin, and she stepped forward to present her situation, as well as delivering another scroll with the necessary details for the daimyo to read carefully, frowning in the process. Yes, I am aware of the situation, and I didn't expect this to be the case you wanted me to hear, the daimyo nodded. No problem, it's easy to do. In a week, the verdict will be sent with immediate effect. Great. I applauded, satisfied with the successful development of the situation. We talked for 2 hours while the kids played in the garden, occasionally using their abilities and leaving the man speechless with the destruction of his precious botanical collection. What did you do to my guards? He asked then. Don't tell me you killed them, there were good people among them. I slapped my forehead, just forgot everything. Maki, release the guards. I shouted. Yes, Mr. Enel. Maki stopped playing and stepped on the ground. A large amount of mud began to cover the garden as the daimyo's unconscious guards floated to the surface. Those are all of them, alive and asleep. There they are, they'll be as good as new in 20 minutes, at least. Their vital signs seemed to indicate that they would regain consciousness by then. Giving Maki the swamp fruit was a good choice, so she doesn't have to carry the fabric scrolls constantly for her techniques. She can store them in the swamp and pull them out of her body by surprise, as well as having much more fabric at her disposal. When we left, the daimyo himself came to bid us farewell at the door, smiling as he held a small square box in his hands. And inside, rested a golden apple. After a touching and totally invented story, I made sure the man couldn't wait to eat it. Once its effects come into play, I'll have a lackey who can do me some favors using the workforce of his entire nation. Now comes the important part of our visit to the capital, looking for a location for the store and hiring staff. Chapter 106, Well-Intentioned Selfishness. Dad, why are you keeping it? Nimue asked distractedly, not understanding the figure in the medical capsule. Mikoto Uchiha's body lay in silence, suspended in the solution, just as it came into the world, before I pressed a button and the glass became opaque to hide its contents in case someone else comes to my laboratory. Take it as a backup plan for certain situations, I replied to Nimue, waving my hand. Remember that you can't tell anyone about it, it will be a surprise, I added. There was a reason why I kept the body in optimal condition despite our farewell, all because of a private conversation I had with Mikoto, if it can be called that. It was more me talking and her nodding or shaking her head. As I said, the Pure Land was the best place to heal Mikoto's soul. I still have to delve into that topic since I only have a superficial understanding of the native knowledge I obtained and some data derived from the impure resurrection technique, but using some experiments in the purest Meiri Kurotsuka style, that should be compensated soon. Perhaps half a year at most. My theory was that the environment of the Pure Land should accelerate the soul's restoration cycle a considerable number of times, while being able to confront Fugaku and see some deceased family and friends should also accelerate putting Mikoto's mind in order. In short, for her to be fully alive again, she needs to be dead for a long time to recover. It's crazy, but it is what it is. Now, my conversation with Mikoto was somewhat depressing, but I wasn't going to take the initiative to kill her, and she knew it. So after half an hour of conversation, we came to a kind of agreement or favor. Can it be called that? I'm really not sure. Essentially, in case there was an accident that killed her completely, unlikely with the fruit I gave her, but that's how we ended much to my regret. I hoped I could help her preserve her body so she could be revived completely later instead of in an artificial shell like a Jigai or derived from some sacrifice. In return, she relinquished the entire collection of books from her clan along with other promises. How else would Mikoto approve of Pakura collecting the Uchiha library? She left enough behind for Sasuke to use, and unless he suddenly becomes a scholar and forgets about revenge, that's plenty. As for the reason for wanting to revive, naturally, it's for her children. Fugaku was a terrible father and an even worse clan leader, but Mikoto has so much maternal love that it overwhelms even from beyond. And returning her soul to her original body is something extremely easier, with no rejections and fewer complications in theory. But this will also give me some headaches because if I demonstrate that I can fully revive someone, not yet, but I surely will later, I will start receiving hopeful requests. There's a possibility that Seimeikage will ask me to bring back her parents, and I wouldn't have a problem. They are my in-laws after all, and Seimeikage's happiness is an absolute priority for me. I don't think Haku will ask me to revive his mother, although I don't rule it out, but Mariko might want her husband back, who is also Kairin's father. I also don't think Shizune would want Dan to come back, not after what she had to endure secretly for so long after his death and the revelation of the truth. In fact, thinking about it that way, maybe she would ask for his resurrection just so Tsunade can kill him again for playing with her heart. And speaking of her, I'm sure Tsunade won't be able to resist and will ask me to revive Noeki and maybe some Senju who were close family to revive the clan. I could do it, but I'm not willing to do the first. The reason is simple. As much as Noeki loves his older sister and as much as Tsunade promises me that he will behave or that she will convince him after coming back to life, I personally would never trust him. He's the kind of naive but impulsive person who would die for his ideals, and no matter how moving that sounds, it doesn't change that his dream is to become Hokage, and his loyalty is and will always be in Konoha, not here. His mind has already gone rotten, so to speak. There's a reason he was confused with Naruto. I'm not going to risk a almost guaranteed traitor who has childish dreams and believes he is right just because Tsunade and I get along as a family at this point. Is it selfish? I don't doubt it, but I won't give in on this point. Besides, in a way, I'm preventing Tsunade and Noeki from fighting at a strong emotional level that would make things very ugly between them. Let's find comfort in that idea, shall we? So. Mikoto coming back among the living? Easy. Seimeikage's parents? Sure, the first ones. Haku's mother? I can do it. Mariko's husband? I would need more information, but it's possible. Shizune's uncle? Forget it unless you want him dead again. Senju clan members? Some are okay, we could add some Uzumakis along the way. Tsunade's younger brother? Never. So when I manage to master perfect resurrection, I need everyone to believe without exception that even with my abilities, it's extremely complicated, difficult to achieve, and with a bunch of obstacles that make successfully carrying it out rare. From there, I can start working and deny that for X logical reasons, but not demonstrable in any way, it is impossible to bring back Noeki and anyone else I don't want. Of course, there's also the possibility that when the dead walk among the living again, some people recognize them. No matter, but I'm not going to revive Inoichi no matter how much the Yamanaka clan asks if Shikaku connects the dots and informs them. Not only because of what he did but because then the information for which he died would fall into Konoha's hands. Now that I think about it, I just screwed Ino over pretty badly, and it's not even her fault. I don't know if she'll go through a gothic phase, a quest for revenge, or move on. Anyway, once Mariko finishes the new version of the seal, techniques like these won't be so lethal. Oops, I'm getting off track again. It happens to me more and more often. Come on. Pakura must have finished preparing the dishes, I told Nimue. We left the laboratory, and I couldn't help but turn around for a last look unconsciously at the last moment before the door closed. Thank you. I think hunger is affecting me because I had the feeling of hearing Mikoto's voice right there. I rubbed my stomach, and yes, it's definitely because of hunger and not due to some paranormal cause that transcends the limits of life and death due to the positive karma of my actions. Now that I think about it, I hope Mikoto doesn't ask me to resurrect Kushina because if she finds out about the legal claim we made to Naruto. Well, Let's add Kushina to the blacklist along with Kawaki for our safety and health. Wait, will Mikoto see Kushina in the Pure Land? It doesn't matter. Actually, I never confirmed that she knew her, and everything was a misunderstanding on Mikoto's part, so I don't think she'll take it into account. Chapter 107, The Toad's Trap. Konoha, Hokage's office. I never expected that the legendary sage toad of Mount Myaboku, would fall into a trap like this in my life. Lord Jiraya, the next documents from the intelligence department have arrived. A charming mature lady with red glasses entered and deposited a mountain of papers on the desk, reaching her own height. What? Jiraya looked at the papers and, adding the other piles of documents, felt like crying. Where the hell is Shikaku? He asked with the resentful tone of a child who has been deceived. He's currently attending an important joint meeting organized by the Nara, Akimichi, and Yamanaka clans, the woman informed him as she adjusted her glasses. He won't be able to assist you for at least a week, he sends his apologies. A week? Jiraya's eyelid trembled incessantly, and he felt like they were openly questioning his intelligence. What kind of meeting takes 7 days and nights? Fuyu-chan, how about we take a little break and go to the hot springs? Jiraya proposed, his eyes roaming over the woman's figure. No, thanks, the woman refused without hesitation. I have a date with my boyfriend after work, so I would appreciate it if you made an effort to finish everything as soon as possible. Fuyu turned around and left the Hokage's office with firm steps, closing the door behind her. Heavens, she really lives up to her name, as cold as winter, Jiraya complained with bad humor as he took another paper. How the hell did sensei endure this life for several decades? I've been here just a few days, and I already miss gathering inspiration for my books. The worst part is that whoever looted the village during the Seimeigakure attack even stole Sarutobi's crystal sphere, so he couldn't inspect the village secretly as the third Hokage did back then. But I really didn't expect everything to crash like this. Although Shikaku masterfully deceived him into taking care of the documents just an hour after his arrival, with the absence of those elders and Danzo's disappearance, no one could block some investigations, and he managed to access documents that darkened his view of the village a lot. The worst part was that he found Tsunade's box, with her headband on which a cut ran through the Konoha symbol. The mere sight left him stunned and immobile for minutes, more affected than when he heard of his sensei's death. What happened for you to go to such extremes, Tsunade? He thought bitterly and with loss. As Tsunade's teammate and someone whose shared trust was a matter of life or death on the battlefield, he knew some of the seals in the Senju complex, and despite being somewhat reluctant, he decided to enter and take a look. An hour later, he came out with a darkened face. If some of the old mules were still alive, then it wouldn't have been a problem to sneak away and leave them all the paperwork to go look for answers from Tsunade, but with all the high-ranking officials dead, on principle, he couldn't leave Konoha in this time of need. He also knew, thanks to his master's guide, that allowing a clan to monopolize critical positions in the village was unacceptable. So even though he wanted Shikaku to help him as an assistant, he couldn't let him take command, even if the Nara clan was known for not desiring power. This is why I always avoided returning to the village, he complained mentally, cursing especially when he found an accounting document reflecting that the money he sent to Naruto from outside the village was actually intercepted by Sarutobi under the premise of investing it in the village. He was well aware that as a master of intelligence and espionage, he needed to move constantly around the world to capture critical information, and his search for Orochimaru may have had something to do with it, so even though he couldn't be there for Minato and Kushina's son, he made sure he had enough money to be well fed, covered, and could afford the necessary ninja tools or books for his training or education. To think that the boy grew up on instant ramen and expired milk. No wonder he seems to lack the cunning and intelligence, or talent, of his parents, he simply didn't have enough nutrition for his brain. 2 weeks later, he managed to leave everything prepared to leave and urgently find a suitable candidate for the position of Hokage, but that was when the daimyo's envoy arrived, and he had to meet with him due to his temporary position. After 2 hours of pomposity and enduring the other party's haughty attitude, he managed to dismiss him while holding the daimyo's verdict firmly in his fist. Setting aside flowery words and speeches, the summary and conclusion were that Naruto was forbidden from continuing to use the Uzumaki surname after the denunciation by the last survivors of the clan and proclaiming himself as such. From this moment on, he could only use his father's surname. If he decided to ignore this decree, he would offend both the daimyo and the true Uzumaki clan, as well as the village that supported them, Seimeigakure. Jiraiya didn't know how to feel because this made him happy and angry at the same time. On the one hand, he could finally reveal that he was the son of the fourth Hokage and would no longer be treated cruelly by people. But at the same time, it meant that the childhood he had to go through didn't make much sense in the first place. In fact, he knew that what Danzo and his sensei did is no different from training a dog with questionable methods, to ensure the Jinchuriki's loyalty to the village. Furthermore, when he told Naruto the news and could speak openly about his family's identity, his reaction was, let's say it was very smart on his part to summon him to a very secluded training ground alone. He didn't like at all knowing that he had to change his name for real. He still thought that what Karin said back then was just nonsense to deceive him, and to know that he was really repudiated by the Uzumaki, who were his last remote family connection. Jiraiya had to suppress a Naruto with a nine-tailed chakra cloak, and while he was in the hospital healing the bone in his arm after the confrontation, he reflected on Seimeigakure and the information that Shikaku provided before going to his meeting. Which, according to the information he received, still hasn't ended. Why did he say that the person who accidentally died at the hands of Inoichi looked exactly like Mikoto Uchiha? Also, how is it possible that the daimyo approved a decree in this way and so quickly? It made no sense, but something in his gut screamed that he was missing something important, and he couldn't place it. Damn it, this village of Seimeigakure does nothing but cause problems. Maybe he could trick Kakashi into becoming Hokage. Chapter 108, Impossible Marriage. During the excellent meal prepared by Pakura, I noticed a small detail that many overlooked in the series as I let my mind wander a bit. Ino could never have been with Sasuke. I mean, she is the direct heir of the Yamanaka clan, and Sasuke belongs to the Uchiha clan, so even if the Uchiha massacre didn't happen, I doubt the Yamanaka clan would accept allowing Ino to leave the clan and join the Uchiha through marriage, taking with her their blood and secret techniques. As for Sasuke joining the Yamanaka clan, it's even more impossible with how possessive they are about controlling where their blood, which gives the Sharingan, goes. Can you imagine someone combining the mental arts of the Yamanaka clan with the illusions of the Sharingan? Actually, that would be a bit scary. Moreover, I suspect the reason Sakura eventually had the chance was not just because of her almost blind dedication but because she came from a civilian background, and her daughter, whatever her name is, wouldn't be as entangled in political issues being born to a civilian. Although it's ironic that, in the end, the couple only had one daughter. One would think it's because Sasuke is traveling or something, but I always believed he also had trouble in the bedroom or with Sakura's insistence, it's impossible that they had only one child, especially under the need to revive a clan. Their situation can't be compared to Naruto and Hinata in the original timeline, that's another can of worms I don't want to think about. Tonari died a long time ago, and if Naruto continues to be as dense and superficial, he deserves to remain a perpetually single dog. No, wait, I think in the movie, he already had quite a fan following, so I guess in some way, the Namikaze lineage will endure. Because he doesn't have enough Uzumaki genetics to pass on to his descendants, confirmed. Although, I'm realizing that Hinata didn't seem to pay much attention to Naruto. I mean, she treats him with courtesy, but that's due to her good manners, and I haven't seen her turn red or smoke being near him. Is it because Naruto didn't save her that day? Meh, I couldn't care less. I just hope Hinata ends up with someone who truly deserves her this time, she's too good for someone like Naruto. I'm sure that after sitting in the Hokage's office and seeing the documents, truly understanding what the position entails, he immediately regretted his dream. It's even possible that he didn't dedicate to Hinata the time she deserved. I conduct my experiments, travels, and teachings while being with Imairai, Pakura, and Anko at the same time, and they'll never say I don't make sure to have my time with each of them, making them feel appreciated and loved. I also try to have more special moments, like brainstorming new recipes using apples with Pakura, helping synthesize new poisons with Anko, or having some sparring matches against Imairai to gain more combat experience. Enel. Oops, I was daydreaming again. Sorry, I was distracted. I apologized politely to Pakura. What were you saying? Now that Raza has died at the hands of Orochimaru, I was wondering how we will face Seimeigakure in the future. She raised the topic. Tsunade grimaced when she heard the name of her former teammate, now the cause of her ex-master's death, but continued to eat in silence. She's been quite calm for a few days, I guess it's because she essentially deserted in front of everyone silently. Raza was the reason she essentially ignored that village since the last gold purchase, and now that he's out of the equation, I suppose we have to consider how we can interact with them in the future. Do you have any ideas in mind? I know Pakura wouldn't ask if she didn't already have an opinion on the matter. You and Maki are originally from there, so I guess you understand the situation better than us. I would like to support one of Raza's children to take his place. Okay, that was definitely unexpected. And would you do that because? I know Gaara will become the next Kazekage after the events of the Chunin exam, where Naruto's dangerous talk no jutsu made him change his attitude. That should definitely be classified as a forbidden technique. But I don't see how it would benefit us to support the Kage of a foreign village. Even stranger, Pakura offering to support the children of her most hated enemy. Although I'm aware that she can separate enmities, so I doubt she has a bad impression of the kids. In fact, I remember during the Chunin exam, seeing her talking to a shy Temari, more like when someone meets their idol, at a stand selling roasted chestnuts. That means, I think Temari could be a good option, and by supporting her to get the position of Kazekage, we could ally ourselves with Tsunade. Perhaps not on as deep a level as we are now with Seimeigakure, but at least we could be friendly and easily acquire some rare metals found only in the desert along with intelligence. The friendship of the Kazekage, a supply of metals for the laboratory, and intelligence it's tempting. I lie, intelligence can be manipulated, so that part isn't as attractive, but the rest a bit. Couldn't we ask Sasarigane and his clan to gather these rare metals? I asked Pakura, and what do we do if Seimeigakure and Tsunade end up facing each other? I'm pretty sure the Scorpion clan knows the desert well enough to retrieve what we need from it. It would practically be free at the cost of having to wait just a little longer. Why didn't we use them during the exam? Simple, we were sweeping through, and using them would only be pointless bragging. Although I admit that the Scorpion clan could bring the same rare metals, they could only extract them raw, and we would have to refine them ourselves, something very annoying and unnecessary. When getting the collaboration of Seimeigakure, Pakura responded logically, to which I nodded in agreement also. You know that the possibility of those two villages facing each other is almost impossible because they are separated at the two extremes of the world map. Between them is the land of rivers, the vast land of fire, and the land of hot water. They have many more numbers to fight against Konoha, Kirigakure, and even Uegakure. I think Sister Pakura is right. Anko supported as she cut the food. Currently, we have a hostile relationship with Konoha, at least until the new Hokage takes power and expresses their stance towards us. The old man from Uegakure is still fuming since you seduced his granddaughter Ame. Jiraya added with laughter as she joined the conversation. I can only say that the girl has good taste. I didn't do it. I feel incriminated and flattered at the same time. We also have to consider that Kirigakure holds some resentment towards me for my desertion and the 3 swords I have in my hands. Jiraya added, her gaze alternating between the chocolate cookies, cheesecake, or vanilla pudding, struggling to decide which dessert to take. So strategically speaking, we could become the link for an alliance between Seimeigakure, Seimeigakure, and Tsunade. Oh dear, I see where we're going. Wait, does that mean the villages could coordinate in secret and launch pincer attacks on any of the other 3 great villages? Nimue suggested while wiping Fu's stained cheek with a napkin. The table fell silent. Of course, they would. No one here is stupid, and what Nimue just proposed would send shivers down any strategist's spine. The reason? Simple. There's no conflict of interests. What Tsunade and Seimeigakure desire the most are fertile lands, while Seimeigakure doesn't need them, and instead, we're more interested in research resources that wouldn't be a problem for them to give us. Due to the opposing disposition of these 2 villages, they can clearly draw a line in the middle to receive a satisfactory portion of cultivable land and resource-rich lands in the event of a successful conquest. And the larger the allies' land portion, the more types of rare resources we can easily obtain through them. Although, that's not enough gain in my opinion to decide to go through with it. We would have to do a lot for very little in return. Let's take it step by step first. Let's talk more about the Seimeigakure matter later. For now, let's finish the meal before it gets cold. I told everyone, who nodded in agreement. Pakura has worked hard, and I would hate to spoil her effort. Pakura, who was sitting next to me, smiled and gave me a kiss on the cheek with those soft lips of hers, looking at me with gratitude for the consideration. Suddenly, everything tastes better. It's funny what love can do. For some reason, I'm sure someone thought something strange when they read today's title and mistook it for something different. Relax, it's not what you think. XD. Chapter 109, Pakura's Plan. After finishing the delicious meal and clearing the table together, we put on swimsuits. Some of us sat by the pool, soaking our feet, while others lay down to sunbathe. After applying sunscreen, of course. So, why do you want to support Temari as Kazekage? I asked Pakura while applying sunscreen to Anko's back with familiarity, and she practically purred under my hands. I would expect that if you want to help one of Raza's children, it would be Gaara. In terms of potential, he seems to have more than Temari due to his Jinchuriki status. At least, I remember he could move significant amounts of sand when he assumed the position years later during the defense against Akatsuki. About half of what Pakura can control right now with her devil fruit, which is quite a lot considering it's under the condition that she doesn't strain herself too much to do it. As for Kankuro, no, he wasn't even mentioned once. I mean, come on. That kid only knows how to use Sasori's puppets by the book, and he didn't even modify them a little. It's like he lacks personality, and that's why he paints his face, to say, I still exist. No matter how much power he has, Gaara is too cruel and bloody. He wouldn't be a good leader for Seimeigakure with the childhood he had, and even less, a reliable person who would return kindness. Pakura shook her head. True, Pakura doesn't know about Gaara's change in perspective, and I don't think she got the best impression of him after seeing his behavior during the Chunin exams. So I guess it's normal for her thoughts to follow that line. Besides, if Akatsuki takes Gaara later, the village will still have its Kazekage to organize it, although I'm sure he would still try to retrieve his younger brother. A Kazekage Temari. Hey, actually, with her personality, I think she wouldn't do a bad job as the village leader. The only downside I see is her lack of experience due to her young age and in administrative matters, but that's what the council is for, assisting until she gets familiar with everything. So, would she go down in history as the first woman to hold a kage position instead of Tsunade? Now I'm interested in seeing how that would unfold. And what exactly is your plan? I asked as I moved from applying sunscreen on Anko's back to Tsunade and Shizuan, who were sporting light blue bikinis. It's surprising what the confidence gained after years of honesty and sincere dealings can achieve. Since they know I'm not looking at them with lust. Jiraya, they treat me like a friend and a sincere teacher. Perhaps if I didn't have the three best women in the world by my side, my thoughts would be different, who knows. In any case, I'd be lying if I said I'm not a bit touched by the trust they have in me, especially how Tsunade can relax despite her personality, which one would expect to only allow Shizuan to do what I'm doing now. Seimeigakure will now have to make a painful compensation to Konoha for the attack if they don't want to face them, and they'll be at a pretty low point. So, Seimeigakure might take advantage of this to attack their supply routes disguised as bandits to further impoverish them while they gain resources covertly and almost effortlessly. Pakura explained with experience. At the same time, I have no doubt that even with the compensation delivered to Konoha, they will take measures from the shadows to increase the prices of grain and some fundamental foods that Seimeigakure is forced to import for its survival. Incredible, if Pakura had managed to be the Kazekage instead of Raza. Chills. Wow, they really want to tighten their necks and stomachs, commented Anko lying face down while enjoying the warmth. Given the chaos in Konoha, if they had the courage, they could deliver only half of the compensation that, a bit to the right, that's it. Moaned Tsunade, causing me to raise an eyebrow at what seemed to be they really demand. After all, the village is also going through a tumultuous period after the elimination of the old fossils by Seimeikage, and they just want a bit of face to convey a message that, a bit stronger. Mariko, Maki, and the others were trying to contain their laughter at Tsunade's attitude towards me, understanding that she's teasing me due to our mutual trust. Am I applying sunscreen or giving you an oil massage? Never mind, who made my hands so skillful after going through the heat of so many night battles. Although the expectant look of a restless Shizuan in a bikini has me amused. I think Pakura's plan should involve the Wind Daimyo, right? Mariko turned her head as she finished applying sunscreen to her daughter and began with Fu. That's right, Pakura smiled, nodding as they followed her train of thought. Before Raza sank the village's relationship with the Wind Daimyo due to his lack of social skills, he held me in high esteem. I believe that if I approach him to suggest Temari as a successor, I could convince him. This would be a massive achievement to support Temari's rise. You want the missions that the daimyo has been diverting to Konoha to return to Seimeigakure and increase the annual economic support to the village. This would make Temari's words, actions, and influence skyrocket. Nemu accurately guessed Pakura's intentions. But now you're no longer part of the village subordinate to the Wind Daimyo. Shizuan raised a valid question. Will your opinion still matter to him? I don't doubt it, Pakura asserted confidently. Since I'm willing to support a kunoichi from Seimeigakure, for him, it's the same as regaining his lost prestige in that village while forming a new connection with Seimeigakure through me. Pure benefits, and all he has to do is let go of some money. And? I added as my lotion-coated hands moved from Tsunade to Shizuan. I had a feeling that couldn't be all, not with Pakura in mind. And Pakura stuck out her tongue cutely, realizing she couldn't hide her plan from me. I think we could bind the wind daimyo as you did with the fire daimyo. Using a golden apple to secure support. Undoubtedly, the effects it has are a devastating temptation for a ruler, and if we limit the quantity to one every few years, it's not impossible. We would have 2 daimyos under control who would make sure not to offend Seimeigakure and would even take the initiative to help in the hope of gaining more benefits and favor. For example, getting a couple of smiles to strengthen their personal bodyguards. It's worth noting that from my perspective, daimyos are not a big deal, but for people native to this world, even ninjas are cautious when dealing with nobles, not to mention the daimyo. Given that this plan works, there are still at least 2 obstacles, Tsunade said, raising her head slightly, blushing between her crossed arms. You still have to convince Raza's daughter to allow you to support her, and you also have to do something about the food. Believe me, Temari won't be a problem. Pakura shook her head. I talked to her, and I can see that even after my circumstances, my words still carry weight in her youthful mind. In any case, I'll need to talk to people like Cho and Ebizo. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. As for the food, I have a plan. Chapter 110, Cut and Separate. So, your plan is to use intermediaries to buy durable food more cheaply in the land of water and use ships to transport it quickly from there by sea to a hidden port in the southern part of the land of wind, where caravans could safely send everything without the danger of raids because the unusual route passes through a no-man's land, far from any borders. I summarized. That's right, confirmed Pakura as she traced her finger on the map. The only reason they haven't done it until now is that they don't have the money to invest in transport ships, but if we lend it to them, this will not only further strengthen Temari's foundation to obtain the position of Kazekage, but it would also involve a deeper debt with the village, not only for allowing them to buy cheaper food but also for opening a new trade route that won't be discovered by other villages for years if used correctly. They wouldn't even need to repay the debt in the form of money, they could search for metals, herbs, and rare minerals to compensate. Yes, Pakura would have been a great Kazekage without a doubt. Aren't you worried that they might break their word and dismiss their debt once they are stabilized? Asked Seimeikage, to my surprise, because she usually gets bored talking about these topics. Although we're talking about a powerful kunoichi who grew up in Kirigakure during the Blood Mist, so things like betrayal will undoubtedly be something she pays attention to. According to my analysis of her personality, Temari wouldn't take the initiative to do something like that. Pakura shook her head. Besides, after what happened in the Chunin exams, I don't think any village would want to provoke us for a while. Good observation. I guess from the perspective of outsiders, the idea of angering elemental giants capable of massive attacks doesn't seem attractive at all. And there were only 3 of us. If Anko were to act with the power of her devil fruit, Konoha might now be an uninhabitable poisonous swamp for who knows how many years. Even Fu's ability could have been more devastating. Alright, that would solve the daimyo's money part, the food shortage, and catapult Temari far above the other candidates. Nimue summarized as she looked at the notes on her tablet, but she still lacks the strength corresponding to the position. Yes, making a Tsuninakage undoubtedly gives those who don't want her there a significant reason to hinder her, said Mariko. She would need to become stronger, but that would take time. A time she can't afford if she wants to get the position, unless... Pakura looked at me nervously suddenly. Wait, is she suggesting? You want to give Temari a devil fruit? I asked her with evident incredulity in my voice at her bold idea. I never wanted to circulate the real devil fruits outside of Seimeigakure. If after what happened in Konoha, Seimeigakure found out that I gave one for free to Tsunade while they can only buy smiles, what do you think will happen? Dad, I think Mom. Pakura is referring to those defective ones from your early attempts that are gathering dust in the warehouse. Nimue interrupted before the conversation continued and a great misunderstanding arose. I completely forgot about those fruits. Just as Nimue said, I called them defective because I wanted them to be one thing and they turned out to be something else. And they're not really that powerful, at least there's no Logia or mythical Zoan among them. Which fruit were you thinking of? I sighed, running my hand over my face when I realized that I simply couldn't say no to my dear and beloved Pakura. I adore her too much, and even though I hate to admit it, deep down, I thought it was a shame to leave those fruits unused. But I just felt that it was a waste to destroy them after managing to form them, so I reached a dead end. As long as it's something ordinary, it shouldn't be a problem. I was thinking of... Pakura moved her eyes as she remembered the name of the fruits in my warehouse. Paramecia type, the Kama fruit. Eric's fruit? I thought about it. In fact, it's not a bad choice, although not the best either. Temari uses her giant fan to fight and uses cutting air bursts. If she could gain the power of this fruit, her wind-based ninjutsu combat style would completely escalate. She would quickly familiarize herself with the use of the ability, and at the same time, her versatility would multiply. She could be immediately classified as at least a special jonin, perhaps even a regular jonin if she uses the right strategies, and after a well-focused period of growth and sufficient creativity, the Kage level wouldn't be impossible. It's just that Temari will have to live the rest of her life with nails similar to those of the Inyazuka clan, long and sharp. But it should be a minor sacrifice for what she will achieve at the end of the day. Alright, but... Thank you, thank you. Pakura didn't even let me finish the sentence before jumping towards me, hugging me, and starting to kiss me over and over with glassy eyes, pressing her body against mine with force. Everyone knows how much I am against releasing my real devil fruits outside, so agreeing to her request, even if it's for a plausible plan and only requires a lesser devil fruit, is enough to deeply move her. I saw out of the corner of my eye how Seimeikage and Anko exchanged glances with subtle expressions. I know that look. It seems that tonight Pakura will have an exclusive night with me, courtesy of her sisters. Wait, let me finish. After satisfying the immediate need for affection from both, I continued with what I wanted to say, but, out of conscience and to avoid a big problem, I'll also give a fruit to Seimeigakure first. This way, they won't be able to form wrong opinions. Also, to maintain favorability, it will be one that counters the Kama fruit. Dad, do you mean the Bara fruit? Nimue asked, as it was the only option that would fulfill this requirement. That's the one, I nodded. Yes, I'll give Buggy's fruit to Seimeigakure. After all, this fruit makes its user immune to cuts, as demonstrated in his clash with Zoro, and since the Kama does precisely that, it should. Wait a moment. I have to make sure that Killer Bee doesn't eat the fruit. A perfect Jinchuriki with the power of a devil fruit is only allowed for Fu and no one else. What if I told the Raikage that the fruit could have serious side effects if a man eats it? I prefer Samui, Mabi, or anyone else to have it rather than Aorb. Chapter 111, The Ultimate Sacrifice. With a more or less decided plan and after a sweet night with Pakura, the next morning we set off from the Sky Island and divided into two teams. Pakura, Anko, and Maki will first visit the Wind Daimyo and then head to Tsunade to meet with Temari and propose her job promotion, and power, while at the same time dissuading the elders and convincing everyone as much as possible. Meanwhile, Seimeikage, I, and Karin will move towards Seimeigakure to pay for Asuma's head, deliver the next order, and propose the tentative alliance that would result in giving them the Bara fruit if they agree. As for the possible side effects I invented, I will make sure to emphasize that one of them is stuttering or muteness. That guarantees that the rapper Jinchuriki will treat the Bara fruit as if it were a cocktail of arsenic mixed with hemlock and mercury. He won't want to be near it even by obligation, and he might even avoid fruits for a while. POV Team Pakura. When you said the Wind Daimyo held you in high esteem back then, I admit I thought it was something different, Anko commented, clicking her tongue after finishing the meeting with the leader. Yes, sensei. He couldn't stop giving you inappropriate looks, said Maki, turning her head in disgust at the daimyo's behavior. He probably thinks we didn't notice because he had that ridiculous fan covering most of his face, right? You thought he respected me for my skills as a powerful and recognized kunoichi who developed her Kekii Genkai. Pakura shook her head. The only reason he didn't dare ask me to be one of his consorts back then is that I can use chakra and had the support of Tsunade. He was afraid of angering me and ending his insignificant life, mummifying him using my scorch release ability. Too much woman for him at the end of the day. Do you know it's better that our blonde hunk doesn't find out how that idiot acted during the meeting, right? Anko raised an eyebrow as she looked at her. Seimeikage told me what he did to one of the mist swordsmen when they left Kirigakure after picking up their things. If he finds out, I think there'll be a bloodstorm for his successor to ascend. And we'll have to go through another boring meeting. If there's anyone left. Maki added in a low voice, causing the two older kunoichis to turn and look at her in surprise. What? Haku heard Seimeikage tell the story more than once vividly during the night. He says they're suitable tales for a ninja. Yes, although his jealousy is cute, I think it's better not to stimulate it, Pakura sighed, trying to contain a smile as she imagined it. In any case, we got what we wanted. He'll send missions to Tsunade again, and when Temari's promotion to Kazekage is confirmed, their budget will return at least to the amount they had before Raza ruined everything. From there, it depends on their performance. Although, she looked at Anko with exasperation while pouting, I don't think it was necessary to use that mode to demonstrate the effect of the golden apple. Maki looked at Anko, seemingly agreeing with her sensei's statement. Hey, he demanded a demonstration. Anko raised her hands in a defensive position to demonstrate her innocence in the matter. You knew his arm would grow back, it wasn't that big of a deal. Did you at least eliminate the paralyzing poison from his guards before leaving? I thought so, Pakura rolled her eyes. Let's head to Tsunade. The longer we wait, the less panic they'll have, and that would go against our plan of presenting them with a savior on a silver platter. They summoned a large enough Kinton cloud for all three of them once they left the capital and climbed on top to plunge down at high speed towards the village. Sensei, what about the guards? Maki asked, confused. Weren't they going to neutralize the poison before leaving? Anko. Pakura asked without even turning around. They'll be back to normal in 14 hours. I just hope they don't feel like going to the bathroom because the poison also causes mild incontinence. Anko laughed as she took out a plate of 3 colored dangos from a universal capsule. Want some? I think Enel told you not to eat too many dangos, or you'll end up getting fat, Pakura reminded her sister while taking 2. It's not like I would love you any less for it, I can say that I was actually worried about your health and self-esteem. Don't worry, I indulged for a lifetime with the ones you stole from Konoha, Anko denied with a headshake, remembering how stuffed and regretful she ended up. I specifically looked for Nemu to help me make these with what she called molecular gastronomy, she pointed at the plate of dangos. Although they taste the same as my favorites, I can eat as many as I want without worrying about gaining weight or damaging my health. And why don't you eat them at home? Maki asked as she took 3. I'm pretty sure I haven't seen you or Nemu take them out even once. In fact, I don't remember seeing you or Nemu make them in the kitchen, Pakura confirmed. I have to make them in the lab, and I don't want to see the worried expression on her face. Anko lowered her voice and looked at the dango she was about to eat, sighed and put it back on the plate untouched. Pakura, do you think we could look for some snack later that could get these dangos out of my head? You're the one who masters cooking among the 3 of us. Sure. Enel gave me a book of recipes never seen before after my disappointment with the book I stole from Ichiraku Ramen. Surely, we can find something, Pakura assured her sister, knowing how much she liked them and how painful it must be for her to give them up. But she was willing to do it for love. Sensei, do you think we can avoid a fight? Maki asked with her cheeks puffed from the dangos. It's a possibility, Pakura replied without saying the rest she had in mind. Seimeigakure had just gone through a deception that cost them a great price, so now they could be quite hesitant about any proposal for a while, especially coming from them. Although no Seimeigakure ninja had the strength to harm them, and with Anko present, poison wasn't a concern. If a fight broke out, it would be much harder to convince Seimeigakure that they didn't come with malicious intentions. Should we disguise ourselves and enter? Anko suggested, putting away the dangos. No, I think it's best if we go openly to the entrance, Pakura said, stating her plan. Tsunadegakure's ninjas must have reported everything that happened in the Chunin exam, so if they see me, they should be tense and not be the first to attack until we declare our intentions, she explained. That's all the margin we need to be able to talk. Strictly, it's not even necessary for us to enter the village as long as we can talk to the ones we want. A while later. I think we're lucky, one of those guarding the gate is Tsunade, Maki said after looking through binoculars from the sky. I know him, he also learned the cloth binding technique, but he was never as good as me and had to team up with a man named Musei. With his personality, I think we should be able to talk. Well, let's see how it goes. Pakura took a deep breath and landed the cloud behind a dune to approach the village entrance on foot. Stop! Tsunade shouted upon seeing the figures approaching the village. Who goes there? Hello, Tsunade, Maki greeted from a distance. Maki. Remember that you have more in advance on my Patreon, exclusive content, you can support and all that. There are also drafts of future FFs. Chapter 112, Irresistible Conditions. Tsunade was surprisingly hospitable despite dealing with a dead legend, a deserter, and a kunoichi who gave him chills for some reason. According to him, the moment Maki decided to leave, the pressure and comparison regarding her cloth binding technique diminished so much that she could finally demonstrate her ability without expectations causing constant mistakes, earning her a new reputation. She wasn't the best or anything, but now she had her own merit, and this gave her the confidence to move forward with a new determination. She even found a girlfriend. Maki's desertion was simply a blessing for him. So, when he heard that the three of them were here as representatives of Seimeigakure for a diplomatic visit to discuss business that could affect their villages, he collaborated very warmly. Now the three kunoichis were sitting in the Kazekage's building, waiting for the arrival of the other party while having bowls of seedless raisins in front of them. That was... Pakura was speechless. Too easy. Anko finished her sentence as they exchanged glances. Frankly, they expected to have to break some bones before reaching the negotiation table. Maki, on the other hand, had her arms crossed and her head down. She felt aggrieved, but since everything went in her favor, she couldn't express dissatisfaction. Now they were in the territory of the other party, and any reason they could give to negotiate was not acceptable. Fortunately, they didn't try to use psychological games to make them wait for a long time, and only a few minutes were needed for the arrival of all parties. Ebizo and Cho, the current leaders in the absence of the Kazekage, handling the village council. Temari, the future Kazekage, ignoring her brilliant and tired future. And Beiki, the Jonin acting as the team leader for Gaara, Temari, and Kankuro. He recently joined the village council due to the circumstances. Yes, the same Beiki who murdered Heiate Gecko in Konoha. It's good to see you again, Elder Ebizo, Pakura greeted politely. In that case, it was you, right? Ebizo didn't even allow Pakura to greet her sister or the others. Naturally, he was referring to the gold buying meeting that happened in the past. Now, he could understand how he was aware of her secret. Of course, how else would I know that? Pakura responded with a smile. Cho felt something wrong in the air, as if she were missing some important detail, and looked at her brother suspiciously. What is he talking about? And nothing, it's nothing, Ebizo realized just in time that he had almost accidentally revealed his secret reservation. I didn't expect you to return to the village at this time of need, it's touching to see that. I'm not returning to Tsunade. Pakura raised her hand to stop Ebizo's words right there, which were clearly meant to shift the balance of the situation in the room. While what I came to talk about could immensely benefit your village, I will remain in Seimeigakure for the rest of my life, she declared with unwavering firmness in her voice. What I have there is impossible to find here. This was in a way a rebuke for letting her die back then, and the two elders knew it, just as they knew that they had just tried to use moral ground to gauge her stance and see if they could increase whatever they could get from this sudden meeting. Temari took advantage of the silent confrontation of gazes to raise her hand with a completely puzzled attitude. I can understand the elders being in the meeting, but why was I called? Whatever it was that she was going to talk about, she was sure it was above her position. That, you will have to answer, Beiki said. You were included at their request. We came with one idea, Anko didn't beat around the bush and pointed at Temari from her seat. To support Temari for the position of Kazekage. Nani? The four sand ninjas were stunned by the scandalous declaration. I'm sorry, I just imagined them jumping out of their seats with that scream while making a funny face, and I couldn't help it, haha. Pakura. Cho looked at Pakura to confirm that they didn't mishear. Whether Maki or Pakura, both grew up in this place, and they should be clear that interfering in the Kage election of a village is no laughing matter. Many times, this ended up working against the supported candidate. Indeed, this was my idea as well as my husband's, Pakura admitted. Although the original idea was Pakura's, Enel brought the devil fruit only for her, so she had no qualms about sharing the credit with the man she loved. Why, among all people, would you decide to support Temari? Cho didn't seem very convinced, but she knew Pakura's character. And what will you gain from this? Temari looked at Cho without words. Doesn't she have an opinion on the matter? Pakura presented her points to support Temari, causing Cho and Ebizo to exchange thoughtful looks while Beiki remained silent. His presence here was to, well, generate presence and have the support of opinions. The other side had 3 people, and they were 4 counting him, so they won. The conclusion of the 2 elders was that the offer was genuine, but this only confused them more. But the fact that Seimeigakure did not act against them during the attack on Konoha and maintained their neutrality made them pay more attention. Of course, there are conditions for receiving support, Pakura continued once the fish bit the hook. We expect that once Temari takes office, friendly relations will be established between Tsunade and Seimeigakure, trade will open between the villages, and she promises to pay full attention to a subsequent matter of great importance that I won't mention until everything happens. I understand your logic in wanting to put Temari as Kazekage, she's a good girl, Ebizo nodded. All of Tsunade knew the character of the Sand Princess, and imagining her in charge, it simply couldn't be worse than her father. Also, due to the laws of the village, any of Raza's 3 children actually had numerous possibilities of being promoted. And her loyalty to the village was unquestionable. Her sister made sure to spend enough time with Raza's children to impress that deeply. But it will take months before the village is in a position to properly select the next Kazekage, Beiki commented, thinking about the painful compensation they had to give to Konoha. And it was a Konoha trader who played them. Maki, Pakura called. Yes, sensei. The 4 turned their heads to look at Maki and opened their eyes wide to see her reach into her chest, causing ripples in her body, to extract a scroll that she placed on the table. But no one paid attention to the scroll and continued to stare at Maki. Why didn't they have information that she could do that? Was it a new Kekii Genkai? No, Beiki remembered the 3 furious elemental giants in Konoha's Colosseum, and he realized that there had to be something more they didn't know. The same conclusion came to the other 2 elders because, with their experience, they could clearly see that what was in front of them was not a mud clone or anything like that. Cho didn't even hesitate to open the scroll, skipping the process of checking for traps in it. If the reports of what Pakura could do now were true, then a small trap on the scroll was unlikely since she could end everyone in this room in her way. Ebizo leaned in to read the scroll with his sister. Temari also leaned in silently while Beiki remained lost in thought. Does the daimyo guarantee to direct all missions back to the village? Will the budget for the village recover to at least this figure? Cheaper food? A new secret trade route? Loan to buy cargo ships? Are you sure you don't want to come back and become Kazekage? Cho couldn't help but ask Pakura. The deal was too good, and it seemed so easy to get. And all they ask for in return are these things with barely any value? Metals, rare minerals, and herbs. In fact, we can raise the conditions if you are willing to pay the price, Anko added, who had remained silent since declaring the purpose of her visit. And what conditions and price would those be? Cho frowned, knowing that so far it seemed like everything was too beneficial for them. Anko remained silent and looked at Beiki. Beiki, wait outside and make sure there are no mice, Ebizo ordered as he understood the signal. Beiki nodded and left without protesting. What was being discussed behind these walls was just too weird for him. Closing the door, the old Cho made a hand seal, and the room was completely isolated from the outside. We can add the creation of a small forested area, which under your care, would gradually, over the years, take away land from the desert, Anko explained once only the important people remained in the room. We can also strengthen Temari so that she reaches the rank of special jonin or even jonin in a short time. At what price? Ebizo and Chiyo's gazes gained solemnity as they understood the potential of these conditions. Just being able to have a suitable forested patch of land could give them hopes of terraforming their territory. The only reason they have barely achieved results within the village and near the greenhouse is that the plants outside fail to survive long enough to take root and do their work. And if they manage to increase Temari's strength along with these conditions, with her own power, they would kill anyone who dared to object to her appointment. Chapter 113, Cancelled Order. First, you can't tell anyone that the forested area came from us or witness how it will come about. As far as everyone is concerned, it's the result of years of experiments by Seimeigakure and something irreplicable in the short term, Anko pointed out. This area was going to be born thanks to the powers of Tsunade's fruit, using specially cultivated seeds for desert conditions. It would accelerate their growth and control them to achieve the result of years of arduous cultivation in a single night. Do we need to prepare something? Ebizo asked, concerned. A large amount of fertilizer and at least 3 water cisterns must be present in the area where you want the plants and trees to appear. It will also be necessary to have at least 8 to 12 barrels of the best alcohol you can get. The sum of this will determine how large the area can be at the end of the night, Anko said seriously. In reality, fertilizer and water were the only requirements the seeds demanded, but the alcohol would serve as a motivator for Tsunade. The better her mood, the more effort she would put into it. When Ebizo, Temari, and Cho heard that, they thought deeply. Could the combination of fertilizer, water, and alcohol have such a miraculous effect? We can have everything ready in less than a week, Ebizo gritted his teeth and swore despite the cost. If it weren't for recovering economic support from the Wind Daimyo, he really wouldn't dare to take this step. Good, Anko nodded satisfactorily and turned to look at Temari. As for increasing your strength, indeed, we can do it without any problem, but you have to be absolutely clear about something. A large amount of killing intent emanated from Anko and Pakura, focused on Temari like a cone. If the strength we give you is used against our people, we will ensure that in the future, only 4 great villages are known. I understand. Temari was pale and sweating profusely. She didn't even doubt that the words were more of a promise than a threat. Good, the killing intent disappeared as if it had never been there, and Anko smiled happily to have reached a satisfactory agreement. Shall we do it now? Here. Cho and Ebizo were left speechless. What kind of strength could they obtain in just a moment? 1 minute, Pakura raised her finger and declared. You just have to leave us alone with Temari for only a minute, and she will gain the strength she needs, but she must promise, by her mother, not to speak of how she got it. This made the room fall silent for several minutes before the 3 seemed to come to an agreement. I swear by my mother that I will not reveal anything that happens in this minute to anyone in my life, Temari said solemnly, as her mother's memory was sacred to her. The 2 elders left the room and closed the door, where they met Baki. What's going on? Ebizo waved his hand, indicating him to remain silent. Sister. I'm willing to bet, deep down, Pakura still loves this village, Cho said in a low voice. But the village failed her, so I can only think that this is her way of making amends in a certain way. The minute passed, and they entered the room anxiously, only to see Temari wearing the worst expression of her life as she held her mouth. If it weren't for Cho being an expert in poison and Temari gesturing that everything was fine, they might have suspected she was poisoned by her behavior. That's why I told you to eat some dangos, Anko reminded her with a shrug. After all, another of the flaws of these fruits was that the unpleasant taste was not eliminated. So Temari was torn between wanting to vomit and having an existential crisis about how something so disgusting could exist in this world. You should bring her a glass of water or something, it will pass in a few minutes, Maki commented, mentally hugging Enel for not giving them defective versions of the fruits. A few minutes later, in a hidden training ground. Temari looked at her hands in astonishment, especially the new nails, before looking back at the deep grooves left in the solid rock wall. And she got this just by eating an unpleasant fruit? It felt so natural, had so many possibilities. Meanwhile, Ebizo and Cho were dying of curiosity to know what the hell had happened in that minute of absence for Temari to gain these powers so in tune with her. But then they remembered the promise, and the desire passed as they wiped the cold sweat from their foreheads. With this, the position of Kazekage is a certainty that will end up in her hands, Cho declared. If with everything Seimeigakure has offered, they are unable to put Temari in that chair, she might as well drop dead right there. And Temari didn't have a single word against it, after all. She was going to become the first female Kage in history. Her childish side was excited about being able to go down in history as a symbol, while her mature side had already started thinking about how she could improve the village with all the money the Wind Daimyo would send once she assumed office. Without realizing it, her thought processes began to change to adapt to her future occupation, and she had already located and prioritized some things. After all, she had been living in this place all her life, and she knew which places needed a cash flow urgently. Now she just needed to be trained by Cho to gain political skill, see things more broadly, think more flexibly, and meet the expectations that Pakura-sama had of her. If Cho saw what was in Temari's head, she might have realized in time something she overlooked, too bad. Nevertheless, it will still take some time to make the whole procedure smooth, Ebizo told the 3 kunoichis after finishing the tests. These are just internal matters, it won't pose any problem, but we have to go through them and do some publicity. At the end of the day, Temari is only 16 years old, and we need to readjust people's perception of her a bit. We will return in about a month, Pakura said, looking at how happy Temari was, internally laughing at realizing that her hidden plan had successfully planted the seed. That should be enough time to start maneuvering, we will have everything ready for the forested area without fail, Ebizo nodded happily. Besides, to demonstrate our sincerity, at the end of the day, Maki will no longer be labeled as a deserter ninja. I will take care of lifting the order myself. Anko patted Maki on the shoulder to congratulate her, this was a small thorn in her pride, and now she could finally remove it. Chapter 114, Do Not Provoke. 3 hours later, after Pakura's team left. Did we really do the right thing? Ebizo asked his sister once they returned to the privacy of their own home. Cho remained silent and motionless, sitting with a tired expression on the sofa. Sister. Ebizo looked at her with sadness. Haha. You fell for it again, Cho laughed before becoming expressionless, sighing, and expressing her opinion. I think the village will be strengthened, and Temari will be able to correct her father's mistakes with our support, not to mention the influx of money and food. She looked up to see the ceiling. Even if there were the remote and improbable possibility that Temari would not make a good Kazekage, the benefits the village will receive alone make her worthy of that position. And she doesn't have that trait that condemned Raza to mediocrity. Power and authority hunger, Ebizo continued, nodding. Indeed, he got lost in his desires and delusions of grandeur. It was toxic how his incompetence made the village even poorer, which, at the same time, caused us to depend even more on his gold dust. Perhaps at the moment when the Pakara incident happened, we should have realized that he wasn't a capable leader. He completely deceived us, and by the time we wanted to react, the damage was already done. And even though Temari will take that same position, did you hear her ideas? Cho couldn't help but lift the corner of her wrinkled lips. She didn't talk about how many clans will be under her orders, or how much political power she wants to control, or how much of the daimyo's money she can keep for her personal pocket. Her first idea was to improve the conditions of the underground water wells. Yes, maybe her youth also has its positive sides, Ebizo commented, also very pleased that the kunoichi had her thoughts in the right place. Did you make the preparations? Cho asked with a darker and more serious tone. You know me, sister, Ebizo frowned. I did a clean-up enough so that the other villages won't know about this meeting for at least a few months, and even then, they will only believe that Seimeigakure came to buy some rare metals from us. I've already done the fake paperwork and placed it where the new spies can find it by coincidence with a little effort. And about her security. 12 elite jounin will be protecting Temari from the shadows 24 hours a day in groups of 4. I found 2 expert masters in Futon and Taijutsu to help her intensify her training to reach true jounin strength to take the Kazekage seat. Ebizo tallied up his plans carefully in his mind. I will also take 2 hours a day to expand her knowledge of politics and teach her how to handle documents. Perfect, the sooner we stabilize the situation, the better it will be for us and the village, Cho nodded. The room fell silent for a while. You read the reports of what happened in Konoha, and you've seen the same as me, Cho whispered. Seimeigakure is not something we should provoke. Ebizo nodded, the many years of understanding between them made him comprehend many things with few words. 1 minute. That was how long it took to make a newly appointed Chunin gain the necessary strength to compete with a Jonin in terms of raw power, causing her potential to increase by a huge margin. And they made it seem so casual. If they were to recover a large number of war orphans, indoctrinate them to be loyal to their village, and strengthen them in this same way. Villages needed years to produce new batches to replenish their number of ninjas, while Seimeigakure seemed to have the ability to generate a large quantity with a considerable strength, in a minute. Just thinking about it gave him chills and a lump in his throat. He wanted to think that something like that wasn't possible, that it had to have some terrible price or side effect like the hero's water from Takigakure. But the medical exams they subjected Temari to revealed that she was perfectly healthy, with no hidden ailments, and the hardness of her nails had multiplied countless times. Even her cellular activity seemed more lively. Cho personally verified that the hidden potential in Temari's cells had been unleashed, and her strength would not only grow faster, but she could even maintain her best condition, and appearance, another 15 years above the usual average. Fortunately for them, Seimeigakure seemed to have little interest in expanding. They also had to consider that Pakara regained the support of the daimyo, something that wouldn't be possible to hide for long, and that Pakara herself had a lot of sensitive information about Tsunade. Even if they had the slightest thought against that village for some deranged reason caused by the dementia of old age. They have no idea where it is. How can you attack someone you don't know where they are? Baki said that Gaara was acting strangely. Determined not to continue that line of dangerous thoughts, Ebizo skillfully changed the subject. He hasn't killed anyone since he returned, in fact, it's not his usual behavior. Cho felt so tired. Maybe another reason why she should focus on training Temari, so that the next generation could take care of these headaches. Wait, Temari is Gaara's sister. Brother, Cho slowly turned her head to give Ebizo a sharp look. Now that I remember, what was Pakara talking about before? Ebizo was speechless. Sister, my talent for changing the subject is not comparable to yours. Chapter 115, The Snake and the Apple. In a certain part of a certain land. Damn it! The sound of shattering glass reverberated through the laboratory as Orochimaru looked with frustration at his immobile and purple arms. He ordered his subordinates to run tests, and the result was that his arms were healthy, so there was no possibility of necrosis in his current state. But even after trying again and again, he was unable to restore the mobility of his arms. And for the love of the sage, why did they turn purple? He couldn't even pretend, it was like telling the world that they were useless. Kabuto, he called as he turned with a dangerous light in his eyes and a voice that conveyed impatience. Are there still no news of Tsunade? Since his techniques and attempts were not working, he could only try to turn to the best ninja medic he knew. He was sure that the Senju clan should have ways to restore the damage, and Tsunade knew them. Tobirama left records in Konoha of experiments that confirmed this. I'm afraid not, Orochimaru-sama, responded Kabuto, half-kneeling as he adjusted his glasses, and the reflection of the light turned them white. Despite our spy network, no one has seen the Slug Princess since she left Konoha with the people from Seimeigakure. Seimeigakure. Orochimaru's impression was still clear, and he vividly remembered the combined attack that claimed the life of the Yamanaka clan patriarch. Was there any progress with information on this village? We have been able to expand a lot of information about its members thanks to their presence in the Chunin exams, but their location still eludes us to this day. We also haven't managed to understand how Mikoto Uchiha survived the Uchiha massacre or how she got there. Strangely, Sasuke does not seem to be aware of her presence, Kabuto explained. Orochimaru-sama, do you think that Tsunade is in that place? It's highly probable, he snorted while taking a seat and breathing heavily with pain. Otherwise, with her addiction to gambling and drinking, the rumors of the fat sheep would have circulated long ago, and it wouldn't be so inconvenient to find her. He had an irresistible bait for his former teammate. Using the impure resurrection technique, he could bring back his lover and little brother. It wasn't difficult to obtain genetic samples from both back then, and even less so to find some sacrifices for the ritual. But his bait was useless if he couldn't contact her. I guess, in the end, I'll have to use the alternative, Orochimaru murmured, sighing heavily. Prepare Subject 54F, it's time for him to fulfill his purpose. It's not that he really didn't have the means to heal, but given the complications of the process and how bothersome it was to carry it out, he still would have preferred to try to get Tsunade to heal him and prolong the duration of this body. He's already on his way, Kabuto foresaw the conclusion and took appropriate measures. Also, Orochimaru-sama, I think I heard news that will interest you. It is related to the fire daimyo. What could be interesting if it's related to that man? Orochimaru couldn't care less about the daimyo. I don't care if he's already dead and they're fighting to see who succeeds him. The only reason he hasn't killed him and claimed his money for more experiments is that Konoha would go mad pursuing him, and they would be terribly more inconvenient than now to carry out his operations. Kabuto did not answer, and instead, he took out a photograph to show it to Orochimaru. It's not like he could take it in his current state. Is it one of his sons? Orochimaru recognized the features of the young man in the photo. As a former student of the third Hokage, he had some privileged encounters with the current fire daimyo and remembered what he was like. No, Orochimaru-sama, Kabuto shook his head slowly. He is the fire daimyo. Question marks almost materialized over Orochimaru's head as he processed the information. How reliable is this information? As far as he remembered, the current fire daimyo was 43 years old, but his features had already started to age, making him look older. In contrast, the person in the photo looked like a young man of barely 20 at his best. The photo was sent by one of our most credible spies, Kabuto assured. Not only that, but he witnessed how it happened. Orochimaru looked at Kabuto intently as he listened to the complete story, and he couldn't help feeling uneasy when it ended. So, did the daimyo eat a strange fruit, and his body became young again? He wanted to confirm while thoughtfully furrowing his brow. Not exactly, Kabuto denied. According to stolen records from the daimyo's doctor, he simply returned his body to its prime. That is, it eliminated any adverse effects and ailments that he may have accumulated over the years and brought him to a state of perfect health. There are even rumors that his wife might be pregnant again despite her age. Do we know the origin of that fruit? Orochimaru asked with a gleam of greed in his eyes. The daimyo's guards seemed to have lost consciousness for a period of time, and when they woke up, their boss had a small box with the fruit in his hands and was in a very good mood, explained Kabuto, making it clear that they couldn't obtain information from those present. But I have a suspicion about its origin. Oh. Orochimaru was genuinely interested in the effects of such a fruit. If it really could heal any condition, it would be very useful to get the source to stabilize and have more perfect bodies to take. Perhaps it could even have properties to heal the soul, and he could regain his arms without the need to switch bodies so soon. Seimeigakure, Kabuto didn't beat around the bush and gave his main suspect. How did you come to that conclusion? Orochimaru reflected and wanted to hear more details. Due to the actions the daimyo took after confirming his health, Kabuto pointed out as he adjusted his glasses again, and the reflection hit his eyes. Suddenly and without any audience, he issued a decree in favor of the Uzumaki clan of Seimeigakure against the Nine Tails Jinchuriki in Konoha. At the same time, he also instructed some trusted men in his service that if possible, they should try to help this village in minor matters. Not to mention the presence of a king-size bed made of clouds, which if I remember correctly, the Seimeikage showed as a specialty of his village during the Chunin exams. That, along with the opening of a store in the fire capital that sells these same furniture a few days later, is too much of a coincidence. Orochimaru suddenly felt like he had made some important connections. Was the poison in Tsunade's body left behind after her confrontation with Hanzo healed with this strange fruit? That could explain some things.
Thanks for listening.